Chapter 138. Under the cover of the wild mountains and forests in the depths of Wakanda and surrounded by a clear river, there was a magnificent city built from the ground. Howard could not find another adjective to describe it as magnificent. He had been to all the developed cities in the world, but none of them could compare to the city in front of him. The modern skyscrapers did not stand out like those in New York or Washington. Instead, they were clustered together, reflecting the cold glow of glass and metal under the sun. The floating train passed through the bustling streets of the city on a light rail. The futuristic structure could be seen with one's own eyes. Cale and Howard stopped at the irregular edge of the mirror dimension and looked at the reflection of the city of the future. They were amazed by the immortal city that was filled with the light of technology. This is the true face of Wakanda. Some explorers have been looking for it for centuries, but to no avail. This is the legendary City of Gold. Cale smiled and shook his head. Using gold to describe this place is too inappropriate. There was an almost endless supply of vibranium ore here. In the eyes of the world, gold was a metal used to describe and measure wealth. However, compared to vibranium, it was nothing. Cale, can I take a look inside the city? It's the real world. I want to go in and see for myself. Howard was so excited that he could not speak clearly. He looked at Cale eagerly. It was the first time he had lost his composure. Chapter 142. To the scientists, His Majesty of the Science and Technology was like a believer
Show the
who
king
had
seen
sighed,
God and
let the
wanted to go
invaders see
closer
the
to
true
worship
strength
him.
of the Wakanda Guardians.
Of course,
but you should change
cheers
your
for our
clothes
king,
first. The Black Panther. Otherwise,
you'll be
the
attacked
tribal
by the
royals on the
locals
cliff,
as soon as you
and
go
even
in.
the native citizens
Kyle
outside the
nodded.
cliff were all shouting Part of the reason
excitedly.
he brought Howard here to
Countless
investigate
pairs
was
of
to help
loyal and
Howard break
trusting
the
eyes
shackles
were
of the
focused
old
on the
era's
Black Panther.
technological concepts in the
For
outside
them,
world.
the
The Black Panther had the
Okay,
power of the
I'll wear
Guardians
whatever
that had
you
been
want me
passed
to wear.
down for thousands of years.
Howard
quickly agreed. He was the supreme being
Cale
of the
smiled
Wakanda
mysteriously.
Kingdom, and at the same time,
You
the
said it.
strongest person in this
5
advanced
minutes
and
later,
barbaric land. In the hidden
there
city
was
of
no
Wakanda,
reason for the Black
within the
Panther
bustling
king to
modern
lose to a
streets,
war hero from the outside
with Venom's
world.
simple transformation,
Almost
Cale
all of the
disguised
Wakanda
himself
natives
as a
tall,
firmly believed
muscular,
that this was the case.
dark-skinned native young man in a
Cale,
white robe.
show the strength you should have.
He
He blended into the local
Let
natives
these natives
without
see
any
the top
indifference.
combat
Power of the outside
Kyle,
world.
are you sure I'm dressed like
Howard
this?
stood at the entrance of the
Following
cave,
closely
his palms
beside
sweating.
Cale.
The short Howard
He looked
said in a low
panicked,
voice,
but his
heart was calm.
At this moment,
How
he
could
was
the
wearing a
natives
ferocious
understand that the
bestial
Black
mask that
Panther
covered
was an
his
undefeated
face?
symbol of peace?
His
A legend
exposed,
with glorious
thin upper
battle body
records.
was covered in black and white
No matter
powder,
where he was,
making it
there
impossible
was no
to
reason
distinguish
for him
the
to
original
lose.
color of his skin. On the platform with
He
the
was also
waterfall
wearing a
cliff as the
strange,
background,
primitive
the
wooden
Black
staff
Panther
and a
was ready for
headdress.
battle. Look at
He
them,
slowly
aren't they
raised his
dressed
hands,
similarly, and the claws forged
Cale
from
comforted her
vibranium
in a low
stretched out
voice.
coldly. This is
His
really
whole body
advanced
was
and
covered in
barbaric.
dark vibranium.
The
and he
city
looked
and
like a
items
humanoid
created
Black
are so
Panther.
advanced, but the
He
customs
had
and
the aura of a
aesthetics are
king,
so primitive
wild,
and old,
arrogant,
and majestic. Howard complained about how
Black
he was not
Panther's
used to the
small
way he was
action
dressed,
drew the cheers
but
of the
soon he
natives
was
around
attracted
him.
by the advanced technology
Venom,
inside
full
the city
coverage
and could
mode,
not take his
claw
eyes off. The
form.
Black Panther king raised his
Coincidentally,
Black Panther
a
claw.
hovering train
The Venom
passed
suit
over the
if
top
you
of the
win,
surface
I will
of his
forgive
tall
your
body.
crimes on behalf of
On the
Wakanda.
bridge,
does
doesn't
quickly
quickly
my
hide
heart
against
against
buildings.
buildings. More like an
passed by
open
silently like a stream of
let's
light
get
covering
started.
his
whole body. Howard looked
Cale
up,
agreed.
his
It
eyes
condensed
flashing
flashing
dark
through the
hood on
gaps
of
of
the
the
mask.
I
Covering
haven't
his
said what
face
the
and he
consequences
suppressed his
will be if you
excitement.
lose.
Dark
Whispered to
claws
Cale.
extended
It's
from the tip
Black
of
Panther
Kyle's.
King
They have
reminded
created a
him.
hovering train
His
across
long
the
and
narrow eyes glowed with a
In my
silent
life dictionary,
achieves a very
I
high
still
as he
can't
grinned
find
hideously.
English spelling
He
of
seemed
failure.
Cale smiled and said
Demonic
straightforward from the depths
It's
of hell.
because of the special
Arrogance,
material.
cruel, brutal.
He had the
material,
right to be
and
arrogant.
murderous. Howard did not understand.
these
and
words
steps
seem to
aside
have been
first.
created to describe him.
Cale reminded
ordered
him,
in a
his
deep
full
voice,
coverage
the
body
shield
that
you
was
gave
born
to
when
Stewie
Howard
for
heard
combat
this,
and had
he
been
hurriedly
tempered by
walked
countless
of course
battles
I haven't
edge of the
forgotten
platform,
large and small,
causing the
Howard
Jabari
said
royal
native
family
family
representative
originally
from cheering
cheering
for the
He
Black
looked at
Panthers
Cale
to
and
collectively
disbelief
lose
and
their
said,
voices
inheriting the
in the
power of
transformation
transformation
was
their
their
light
light
evolved
train
train
is
is
made
made
of
of the guardian
vibranium
material.
They could
for
only
his
gasp
entire
and look
life.
fearfully
Vibranium
as the
fight
humanoid
against the
monster that
invincible
was
also
built to
known
hear
as
sound
sound-absorbing
absorbing
steel
steel.
platform.
It was the hardest
While
material
feeling
on Earth.
uneasy, T'Chaka's
It was one of
blood
those
as he stared
expensive
coldly
rare
at
metal
he didn't
bound to
dare to be
mankind.
distracted and held
Of
his
course,
breath.
he used
as
to
stared
think
at
that
the
the
shield
shield
Black
standing
Panther
opposite
opposite
each
was
other
the
on the
only
platform.
vibranium
In the
material
next
on
moment,
Earth.
the king was
two
wearing
of
the
them
one-piece
moved
Black
same
Panther
when he saw
battles,
Cale
creating
holding
a white
vibranium
Cale was
armor
wearing a
or
one-piece
standing. He
Venom
was
battle
shocked and
suit.
repeatedly
Two black
asked
figures.
about
Although
its
both
origin.
battle
That was
suits
several
were dark
times
black
faster
and
than
filled
Wakanda
with
was
savage
using
and lurid
vibranium
storm
after
to
develop
develop
a
a
hovering
huge
train
difference
in nature. Faced with Howard's
company
the most advanced technological product, it's not just suddenly collided with each other. The other was a vibranium organism that they had with the two of them for thousands of years. The water under their feet rippled under the power of the city and enhanced the level of technology. What terrifying power! It can be said that the city itself was built with vibranium as the foundation. He used his hands to block Kale's sharp claws. The answer was so shocking that Howard almost steadied his feet and calmed himself down. Fortunately, he did not retreat even half a step. He was surrounded by natives and his words were stuck in his throat. If he did not have the protection after of the vibranium battle suit, he said from the bottom of his heart, he would have been sent flying. But why is there such a big difference in the region? They would not be evenly matched. A self-made multimillionaire was envious. On the other hand, it was no wonder that for so many years, the vibranium Wakanda had been guarding the gold mine and didn't dare to announce it to the outside world, leading an independent life in seclusion. Kale did not give up on physical attacks. They would expel and even kill the outsiders. He insisted on using his fists. This was a mountain of vibranium at Black Panther's vibranium no matter what suit. This city is the crystallization. It was difficult to break through the surface defense. But the force of the correct and practical principles of technology can save me 50 years of detours. Bring it on. Howard's eyes lit up. Black Panther was not to be outdone. He understood the deeper meaning behind Kale's bringing him here. Instead of retreating, Kale had a genetic disease. Forward and threw himself into the battle they left losing his youthful he wanted to pave the way for them to advance to the future colliding with each other with their superhuman physiques and extraordinary battle For the rest of the time, Kale Howard was completely once again entangled in a fight, looking forward to together with the splashing of water-technological products. They fought back and forth in terms of strength and skill. Was quietly attracted by another phenomenon in the city of Wakanda and stamina. From time to time, there would be groups of natives dressed in strange native clothing heading towards a certain part of the 5 minutes without stopping. The natives also seemed to be surrounding natives widened they talked excitedly with smiles on their faces. They did not expect this outsider blended into combat strength that was not inferior to Black Panther's. Soon, he had a look of realization as he understood was the strongest king who ruled and protected this land. It was not a local festival or anything. King. It was just a coincidence that the king of probably Wakanda don't know what a legendary hero is. Prince Chara would be accepting the challenges of the various tribes in the country. Howard if he succeeded, happily. He would be promoted as the new king. He knew that this battle that seemed to be in a stalemate could basically be declared over. Let's go take a look. After all, the man suggested as he turned around trump cards the most. He was stunned. In the intense battle, without knowing the vibranium battle suits had run away from the area beside vibranium battle suits. He looked around and saw a sea of natives swarming towards the challenge producing a sharp, ear-piercing, it was difficult to see Howard's figure. Whip form. That old gentleman. Kale muttered so in his heart that he dared to leave my side. On his left hand quickly transformed Kale's expression changed slightly. The long Wakanda had always hated outspeed and hid a black shadow with their barbaric methods on the side. If Howard exposed his true identity, movements the consequences fell into unimaginable. Then he quickly stood up while panting. His majestic and cold gaze fell on Kale through the vibranium southeast end of the future city. Don't you understand? The huge river was cut off. The cliffs as long as it were this all-in-one battle suit made of vibranium battle the waterfall cascading there is no possibility of me being defeated at all. On the upper half of the cliff, the drop of rocks wasn't big enough. Okay. The members of the royal families of each tribe gathered you are more durable than steel. All the way down to the flat Kale shrugged and glanced at his chest. The platform there were some traces of Venom's coat being torn by this was the battlefield where the royal challenge and a few drops of blood overflowed from the surface of the king's guardians wielding vibranium although the self-healing ability was lost wearing strange costumes Venom also had its own super self-healing ability. In the middle of the platform, the damage a young man with a muscular and tanned upper body stood proudly at the edge of the platform, but holding a vibranium shield and a vibranium no signs of damage. His eyes shone with a faint light of wisdom. Black Panther shook his head in disagreement of a king despite his young age. Haven't you noticed? Only the royals of Wakanda's major skills to qualify to stand at the cliff area of the waterfall. Told a fact the rest of the people crowded outside the cliff. What did you say? The chief ceremonial elder held a vibranium spear and there was an uneasy premonition in his flowing water, saying isn't it normal to have 3 combat skills? I hereby introduce Prince Teep and said with a mysterious smile, Vibranium battle suit, raised his shield and sword majestically and immediately knelt on one knee on the platform with flowing water, withstand the causing the royals and people of each tribe to cheer loudly. He stomped on the ground in the ritual battle. Black only surrender and death represent one side's withdrawal. Black Panther's body if any warrior of the royal tribe wishes to challenge Prince Teep, Kale seemed to have predicted his powerful title of Black Panther, and he easily raised his right hand. The chief ceremonial elder cleared his throat and spread out his hands, I will
an
point out
illusion?
the path to the throne for
Black
him.
Panther was taken aback.
At this moment,
but then,
Kale's
followed the crowd
performance
to look
shocked
for
him
Howard.
completely speechless.
When he arrived at the edge of the
effective
waterfall,
combat moves
he
that
happened
thought
to see
he was
the royal
proficient in
challenge
would be seen
ceremony
through
not
by the
far
other
below.
party before they were launched.
As soon as
they
the
would be
chief
resolved with
ceremonial
simple
elder
movement
finished his
skills in
question,
advance.
Shaka looked straight ahead and the royals of each tribe began to respond
Chapter
one after
143.
another. The merchant tribe will
What's
not
wrong with His
participate in the
Highness?
throne challenge.
You ask me.
The
But who
mine
should I
tribe will not
ask?
participate in the throne
No way.
challenge.
Our king will.
The river
lose.
tribe will not participate.
The surrounding
in the throne
indigenous
challenge.
citizens were all horrified.
Kale, who
and
was
even
outside
their
the
discussion
cliff,
was suppressed
saw
to
the
the
scene
minimum.
below and couldn't help
They
but shrug
nervously
in
watched
boredom.
the battle turn into a
Although this
one-sided
was a local
crushing
custom,
in an instant.
it was equivalent to a procedure
From the
to
perspective
show
of
that
the
the royals
third
of
party,
each tribe
the Black
had no
Panther was
objections,
eager to
allowing
regain
his
his dignity
dignity
in the
rightfully
battle
after
after
he
he
fell off
throne.
the stage. But
However,
every swift
in
and
his
powerful
opinion,
attack
this
was
was the
easily
other
seen
side
through
of
Wakanda's
Kale.
advanced hardware. Kale responded in
The
advance
overly
and
barbaric
easily
and
eliminated
backward
his
software
fighting
culture
attacks.
was more like vulgarity.
How could this be?
The city of the future,
Under the beast-shaped
which was far more
vibranium
advanced
mask,
than any other
the
place
old
in the
king's
world,
weathered face
still
was
had a
full of
challenge
surprise
ceremony
and
for the
confusion.
throne where the strong were
He
respected.
was obviously an old warrior.
It was really
but
a
Kale,
barbaric
who was dozens
inheritance.
of years younger than him, was far
Let's
above
find
him in
Howard
terms
as
of
soon as
fighting
possible.
skills and combat experience.
Kale shook his head and was about to leave when
fighting
the chief
skills
ceremonial
with the biggest
elder
gap
raised his
between
voice
the two
and
of them.
asked about the last tribe.
This gap would only be
Is there
obvious
anyone
when
else
their
with the
physical
royal
strength and
bloodline
equipment
who
were
wants to
not
challenge
far apart,
Prince Chaka's
and they were
throne?
both fighting in close combat.
Finally, the representative
You
of the
didn't withdraw
Jabari
your
tribe's
fist
royal
quickly
family
enough.
appeared
Raise
at
it
the
a little
entrance of the
more
cave
and take a step
slowly
forward.
said,
Today, the
Kale
Jabari
whispered,
tribe, as
"Don't
if he
come
was
over."
facing a child and his family.
In the next moment,
and while parrying
a cry
the
of
sharp
alarm
and fierce
sounded
attacks
from
of the
within
Black
the cave.
Panther, he verbally
Then,
taught him. From behind the Jabari
Damn
royal
it.
representative,
The
a
old
slightly
king
shorter
gnashed his
tribesman
teeth.
rushed out in a panic.
As a powerful Black Panther
Ta-ta.
for decades, this was
The
the
short
first time
Jabari
he had
tribe
been humiliated
onto
like
the
this in a
platform
battle.
of the challenge ceremony.
The hardness of the
Instantly silencing
vibranium
the
metal
festive
was ranked
scene.
first among the metals on
Only
Earth.
the sound of the waterfall
If it
could
was
be
used
heard.
to make a full-body battle
The faces
suit,
of countless
it would naturally
natives
be
around the
invulnerable,
waterfall were
but it did
tense.
not increase
Their
the
mouths
attacking
agape as
ability
their
much.
shocked gazes fell on the
Only
Jabari
the
tribesmen.
vibranium claws were the only
There was actually
semi-auxiliary
someone who
weapons.
dared to challenge the throne.
The attacking ability
Countless
depended
members of
entirely
the
on
royal
the primitive
family
fighting
were shocked.
skills that were honed from beasts
Even the
and
Jabari
invaders.
royal representative's
The
mouth
primitive
twitched
fighting
slightly.
skills that had been passed
Who
down
was
for
this
thousands of
tribesman?
years were already
One
unparalleled
had to
in
know
the
that as a
country,
warrior,
but in Kale's
Chaka
view,
was determined,
these skills were
strong,
really crude
and
and
decisive.
It
As a
seems that you
prince,
can't
he
attack
was
me,
benevolent,
so now it's my
wise,
turn to
and
attack.
wealthy.
Kale
If it wasn't for
smiled
the
and
fact
clenched
that he
his
was the
fists
king,
tightly.
no one would dare to
With
challenge
superhuman
the throne
strength
during
and
such an
speed,
important
he
ceremony.
began to perform the anti-fighting
In fact,
game skills.
at this moment, other than the
Black
natives
Panther's
who were stunned,
expression changed,
there were two
and he
others who were
switched
just
from
as
offense
shocked.
to defense.
One was the
In a
Jabari
few hasty
tribesman on the
exchanges,
platform.
Kale displayed his
He
fighting
looked
moves
around
to the
blankly,
fullest, and he was beaten
under
back
the
again
strange
and
gazes
again.
of the natives.
He
Kale
didn't know
sneered.
whether to advance or retreat.
It was true that the vibranium
The other
battle
was Kale,
suit could not
who
be
was at
broken
the edge
this
of the
stage.
cliff. But the king inside
When he
had
saw
lost
the familiar
ability
figure
to fight
walk
and
out of
could
the
only
cave
defend
and onto the
himself.
platform of the challenge
Then,
ceremony,
he would no
felt
longer
a
be a
headache
predator,
coming on,
but a coward who could
under
only
the
take a
waterfall,
beating.
on the platform.
He did not show any
Brave
mercy.
warrior,
Are you sure
under
you
the
want to
control of
challenge
his
the
superb
throne?
skills,
The chief
he easily
ceremonial
suppressed
elder
Black
asked in a
Panther
low
and
voice.
did not give him any room to
Aye.
breathe. Before the Jabari
He slowly
tribesman
forced
could
him to
finish
the edge
speaking,
of the cliff that
Chaka
was
stared
100
at him
meters
with
down.
sparkling eyes. He calmly
This
threw
battle
the
had
vibranium
evolved into a
sword in his
one-sided
hand
crushing,
over, as if an adult
I
was
accept your
teaching and
challenge.
teasing a child.
The Jabari
The
tribesmen
citizens who were
instinctively
watching
reached
from the
out
side
to catch
were
the
silent.
vibranium sword.
Awesome.
Unfortunately,
Kale's
although the
eyes lit up,
vibranium metal wasn't heavy,
the more he fought,
it still
the
contained
smoother
fine
it became.
steel.
His
Coupled
blood
with the
was
force
boiling.
of Chaka's throw,
His
the
body
Jabari
was like a
tribesmen
furnace
couldn't
in
take it.
battle, burning and
He hugged the
increasing his
vibranium
energy.
sword tightly,
On
took
the
a few
outside,
steps back,
he was cold
and fell into the
ruthless.
water. He chased
Chaka,
after the
the
Black
surrounding
Panther
members
that
of
wanted
the
to
tribe
jump
all
up and
had
down.
strange looks on their faces
Every
as they
punch of his
discussed.
exploded with more than a
When
ton
did
of
the Jabari
impact,
tribe,
and the
who
water
lived in
splashed when
seclusion
the
deep in
punches
the
hit,
mountains,
become
the
so
old
weak.
Black Panther king could
However,
not say anything.
what happened next shocked everyone
Like a boat
even
in
more.
a sea storm, he had
The
completely
Jabari
become a
tribesman's
moving
body fell
sandbag
into the
and was
water.
chased to the edge of the cliff.
When he stood up with the vibranium still not admitting defeat. The dust on his upper body had been washed away, revealing his Black Panther so hard that he rolled and jumped up, and he almost blasted him out of the cliff. The Jabari royal representative was on all fours, shouted angrily, and he carved his nails into the rock. I told you you got the wrong of the citizens. He stopped the Jabari tribesman sighed helplessly, and one of his feet was hanging in the air. He hurriedly took off his animal mask. I am a Black Panther, revealing the face of a European gentleman. How can I bow my head? His mustache trembled as he said, King roared. Sorry, I came to the wrong place. He used the last of his strength to jump high and pounced on Kale without hesitation. The surrounding royal family and even the natives outside the cliff were in an uproar. The tribal royalty and the citizens
sneaked into
also
such an
anxiously
important ceremony
shouted,
for
"Your
the throne?"
Majesty," trying to persuade him to stop.
He ruined the sacred ceremony.
Kale's face was cold.
Kill him.
He quickly
Amidst
raised
the
his right
furious
foot
shouts,
and kicked Black
the first to
Panther's
take
lower
action were the
abdomen,
king's
and he
female
flew out
guards
like a
who had
rubber
landed
ball.
on the edge of the platform.
Seeing that Black Panther
They
was about
knocked
to
the
fly
cliff
out
with
of the
the
ends of
cliff.
their
A hand
vibranium
wearing a
spears,
vibranium
producing
bracer
a
grabbed
crisp
the
and
dull
dull
foot
sound,
and pulled him up forcefully.
An outsider who trespasses into a ceremony
Black
that only the
Panther
royal
opened his
family
eyes
has
with
the right to
difficulty.
enter must be killed on the spot. He was hanging outside the cliff.
Among them,
and his
the
body
female
was
guard
upside down,
captain, who was wearing a
It was Kale
vibranium
who held his
scarlet
calf with
suit,
one hand,
raised
and
her
lifted his
vibranium
entire body
spear
up
and threw it at Howard with
He
all
was
her
wondering
might.
why the other party saved him instead.
Chaka tried
Then,
to stop her,
Black Panther
but it was
heard
too late.
Kale's muttering. He hadn't eaten
Wearing
the
a
heart-shaped
vibranium
grass yet,
combat
so he
suit,
could only
he
watch
should
as
be
the
fine
spear
even
whizzed
if you
past,
fall off the cliff.
heading straight for Howard's chest.
Such a
at
good
2 times the
sandbag
speed
can't
of
be
sound.
finished so quickly.
Even if it was 100
Black
meters
Panther
away,
rolled his
the
eyes.
captain's vibranium spear
He was
would
so
still
depressed
pierce
and
through a
ashamed
car
that
and
he
nail
almost
it to the
spat out a
ground.
mouthful of old blood.
Moreover, it was less
Go
than
back.
10 meters away. Kale swung his arm fiercely, and like throwing a
Chapter
spear,
140.
he threw Black Panther,
Howard
who
stood
was
there
in
in
his
a
hand,
daze,
back onto the platform.
The speed at which the
Black
vibranium
Panther's
spear
body
was
rolled
thrown
all
was
the
too
way,
fast,
and he rushed into the waves
It was like a
until he
stream
hit
of
the
light,
cliff wall.
and in the blink of an eye,
Father,
it was right in front of him.
King. An ordinary
Chalaka,
person's vision
who was
and
a few
brain
meters
could barely
away,
react,
and the female
but their
guard
body
shouted.
couldn't react or dodge.
They were about to surround
Ah.
Black Panther,
But
but
a
as
cry
soon as
of
they
surprise
moved,
came from
Black
the crowd
Panther
of
raised his
Wakanda
trembling
royalty
hand
and
to stop
natives.
them.
It
The
was a
battle
native
is not
youth
over
who
yet.
jumped off the cliff. The ancestors'
The
rules
energy
can't
tide
be
under
broken.
his feet exploded,
Black
and he
Panther
turned into
said
a blur
stubbornly
as he
and
landed
propped
on the
himself
stage
up
of the
against the
ceremony.
wall.
Kale
His speed
landed
was
in
even
front of him
faster
with
than
a
the
leap,
vibranium
and his speed
spear.
hit the ground, causing
Seeing that the
countless
vibranium
splashes.
spear was about to
Do you
pierce
still
through
want to
Howard,
fight?
the native young man
Kale
arrived
stared
at the critical
coldly
moment.
at Black Panther,
who
his
was
right
close to
hand,
him,
which was wearing a gloomy metal bracer, stretched
Under
out
his tall
like
body,
lightning, and
he
grabbed
was
the
like an
middle of the
invincible
vibranium
black
demon
spear,
god, covering the
Stop
golden
it.
sunlight behind him.
The native young man
The
roared
cold
in a
shadow
low voice
completely
and grabbed
enveloped
the
Black
Black Panther's
Panther's
body
body
that
that
was
was
trembling
trembling
slightly.
The
Can you tell me
supersonic
how many
spear came
fighting
to a
skills
halt
you
in a
have
hurry.
mastered? In the
Black
end,
Panther
the tip
asked
of the
slowly.
spear was hovering less than 3
There was no
centimeters
physical
away
injury
from
in his
Howard's
body,
chest,
but the
unable
exhaustion
to
of
move
physical
forward at all.
strength and spirit had reached the
With
limit
just
of
one
his
hand,
aging body.
he caught the spear that I threw with all my strength from 10 meters away. Kale calmly said
The
this
female
despairing
guard
number.
captain was greatly shocked.
No wonder.
And her heart was in turmoil.
Black Panther shook his head
How
with
could he do
difficulty,
that without a
and then
monster
clenched
level
his
strength
fists
that
hard.
was several times more powerful
Continue,
than hers?
the battle between us is not
The
over
female
yet.
guard captain looked
As
at
the
the
guardian
Aborigine
of this
youth
place,
who had suddenly
Black
appeared,
Panther,
and
I
a
have
chill
to
ran
fulfill
down
my
her
duty to
spine.
defeat the outsiders.
It's not good to treat my
Then,
friend this
as
way.
you wish.
The native
Kale
young man
smiled faintly
and picked
and
up the
punched
vibranium
forward
like
spear.
lightning. After
Bang.
accumulating strength in his
Black
wrist and
Panther's
arm
body
for a
was
short
completely
period of time,
smashed against
he
the
swung
wall
the
behind
spear
him.
and threw it back in the same
Before
direction.
he could struggle to resist,
Take this
Kale's
back.
heavy punch came one
The
after
vibranium
another,
spear
and
turned
continued
into
to
a
land
silver
on his
light
chest
and was
battle
2 to
suit.
3 times faster than
The
before.
strong impact was transmitted,
The female
and
guard
even
captain
vibranium
screamed
couldn't
in
completely
fear.
dissipate it.
She was as
collapsed the
desperate
cliff
as
behind
Howard
Black
was.
Panther.
Bang!
Punch after punch.
The vibranium spear
Kale's
was
red
firmly
eyes
inserted
flickered
between the female guard
under the
captain's
storm-like
calves,
attacks,
nailing
Black
her dress
Panther's
to the
body
cliff
was
behind
pushed
her.
into the cliff bit by bit.
More than half
so
of the
much
2
so that
meter
the
long
entire
spear was
waterfall
inserted
cliff
into
was
the
faintly
hard cliff.
trembling.
One
This
could
extremely
imagine how violent
powerful
and
it was
cruel
when it was
scene
thrown
caused
out.
the bodies of countless
The
citizens
female
to
guard
tremble.
captain's legs turned to
Some
jelly.
directly knelt on the ground.
She sat
and
down
their
on the
voices were
vibranium
frightened and
spear
begging.
and trembled all over.
Stop.
Witnessing this
I beg
turn of
you,
events,
please stop.
the royals of the various tribes
Your
on the
Majesty,
cliff and the
please
people
quickly
on the cliff
admit
all
defeat.
opened their mouths wide in
Please.
shock.
They
Stop
all looked at the
fighting.
native youth who had become
For
the
a
focus
moment,
of
the
attention.
sky
As soon
above
as
the
he
waterfall
appeared.
cliff was filled with
Who
the
are
pleas
you?
of countless indigenous
Teshaka
people.
was shocked.
Looking at the indigenous
He held the
people who
vibranium
lowered their
spear
heads,
shield
and took a
Chiraka's
step
body
back.
trembled.
He had seen
suddenly
the extraordinary
understood why
power
his
of the
father
Black
wanted
Panther
to fight
that his
Kale
father
alone.
had inherited.
Enough.
However,
Please stop.
it was still inferior to the
Chiraka's
young
eyes
man's
were
brute
filled
strength.
with tears,
and he jumped
The young
into the
indigenous
fallen
man
platform
ignored
without
him
caring
and turned
about
around.
anything else. He looked at
He
Howard
raised
and
his
asked,
hands and
"Are
said
you
in a
okay?"
deep voice,
Kale Prince
Kale,
Chiraka,
luckily you made it in
represent
time.
Wakanda, officially
Howard
surrender.
smiled bitterly.
His right fist stopped abruptly,
His teeth
and
were
the
still
humanoid
chattering.
monster like Kale looked up
He
and
was
calmly
obviously
stopped his
frightened by the
attacks.
dangerous situation just now.
Kale? T'Chaka heard this
Chapter
name and his
144.
eyes widened in disbelief.
In the depths of Wakanda's
Clamping the
wild
vibranium
forests,
under her leg,
it was a city of
the
the
female
future
captain
created
of the
by
guards
technology.
managed to stand on her feet.
In the center of this immortal
Pointing
city,
at the native
there
young
was an
man
ancient and
Howard,
futuristic
she said
imperial
angrily
palace.
and hastily, Two intruders
The floor
have
was mixed with
sabotaged the
vibranium
succession
metal,
ceremony, and it was as smooth as a
Guards,
mirror. Attack. The majestic palace building was grand and majestic. As soon as she finished
shone
speaking,
with a dazzling
the 6
golden light
female
under
guards
the sun.
around her responded. This was where the Black
held the
Panther King
vibranium
lived,
spear
as
with
well
both
as where the
hands and
royalty
quickly
discussed
walked into the
important matters
platform.
of the country. They surrounded
For
the young
thousands of
indigenous
years,
man and
the
cautiously
independent
approached
Wakanda
him. Kingdom had rejected
Kale,
outsiders,
I'll leave it to you.
including foreign tribes,
Howard hid
smugglers,
behind the young
and indigenous
adventurers.
man. They had
Don't
done their
worry,
best to
I'm
hide
here.
the truth of their advanced
The young
technology.
indigenous
man replied confidently.
And today,
there were finally
he
two
calmly
outsiders
looked at the
who
6
were
female
recognized by
guards
the
who
whole
were
of
approaching
Wakanda
him and preparing
and were
to
allowed
launch
to
an
step
attack.
into the sacred place of the
Attack.
palace as honored guests.
The
female guard captain
Countless
gave the
natives
order.
looked on from the outside
The
as
6
the
female
Black Panther
guards were
King
about
led
to
the
charge
charge
when a
Kale
voice
and
suddenly
Howard
came
came
from behind him, walking on the wide
Stop.
road to the palace. Wait for me. Native female guards wielding vibranium
The
spears
surrounding
formed a
natives
line
were
on
slightly
both sides
stunned.
of the road, keeping
They
the
saw
natives outside.
T'Chaka
Raise his vibranium
Kale,
spear
you're
shield
really
and stop
something.
his attack. Look, their
His
eyes
eyes
were
were
shining
shining
brightly
brightly
as he
before.
steadily walked forward. Howard whispered, "Your Highness." Kyle smiled
The
knowingly
female
and
guards
said,
and the
"Who
natives
cares
were
about
confused.
the country's laws and regulations?"
T'Chaka
approached the young
Strength is
indigenous
the most
man
important
and stopped
thing.
5 meters away. Only transcendence can
T'Chaka
surpass
took a
these
deep
things.
breath
And stared at the young
Otherwise,
indigenous man. There wouldn't be any exceptions.
He asked
and
with
they
a
would have been
serious
judged
face,
and punished
"Mister,
by the
you are
natives according
definitely
to
not
how
a
they
native
treated
of
this
this
place. The
Also,
natives on the
why
side
did that
were
Mister
still
with
in
the
discussion.
American
accent call you Kale.
Their
gazes towards Kale
As
were no
expected
longer
of a
filled
prince
with
of
the
the
usual
country,
contempt
he still
and disgust
understood
they
the
had
big
for
picture
outsiders,
and propriety.
but with a trace of heartfelt
The young
respect
indigenous
amidst fear.
man
shrugged and said calmly,
Only the strong
"Because my
could
name
earn
is
the
the
Kale.
respect of others. Is there a problem?" This was even more evident
Venom
in the Wakanda
suit,
natives.
disguised
Otherwise
dispelled.
there wouldn't be a royal challenge.
His appearance
ceremony.
changed.
Kale
His
had
black hair
single-handedly
faded back
defeated
to
the
a
Black
dazzling
Panther
golden
King
color.
and displayed extraordinary
His
strength
eyes were
in the
bright
battle
blue.
just now. The clothes
Even
on
if
his
some of the
body
natives
transformed
weren't
into a
convinced,
one-piece
they
dark
could only
night
lower
battle
their
suit,
heads and
revealing
admit
the
his
perfect
strength.
outline of his muscles.
The
natives here all have a
It brought an
primitive and
extremely
barbaric
oppressive
nature.
impact
and invasive
Only
feeling
that
to the
Prince
people
Jack
who looked
just
at
now
now felt like someone who
It
lived
really
in a
is you.
civilized era. T'Chaka
Howard
was
said as he
incomparably
looked around at the
surprised.
royal family members.
He excitedly
muttering in
took a few
surprise.
steps
The
forward. The
royal
royal family members are still
You recognize
here.
me?
Where's the prince? Kale looked surprised.
Kale
said inexplicably.
He
T'Chaka
most likely
quickly
went
nodded
to
in
inherit the
response
Black
to the
Panther's
Panther's power of inheritance.
Of course.
Black Panther's
I once went to
power?
the outside world to
Howard
study
was
at a local
confused.
university in the United States.
Only the king here has the power
Your
of
Highness.
inheritance. Be careful
It's a
of
kind
that
of
man.
heart-shaped grass.
The female guard
After
captain
consuming
reminded
it,
loudly,
you'll
"You'll go through the ritual of seeing
Don't
your
worry.
ancestors in a dream.
If he wanted
and you'll
to kill
obtain
me,
a superhuman
I would have died
physique that's
countless
equivalent
times
to a
already."
super soldier. T'Chaka
Kale
shook
said
his head
calmly.
His
He
face
looked at the
revealed
Black
an
Panther
excited
King in
expression.
front
of him with a thoughtful
He
expression.
slightly
pointed his hand at Kale and said excitedly,
The
as
old
if he had
black
met his
leopard
idol,
king was
"Do you
not
know
as
who he
ignorant
is
as
as he seemed on the surface?
Mr. Kale,
He is
the
the
duel
war
with him
hero
might be
who
for
single-handedly
Prince
ended the
T'Chaka
Second
and the
World
country.
War. The
He
female
is known
guardian
as the
stopped
symbol of
outside the
peace
palace
by
the Americans. The Black Panther King
Symbol
led
of
Kale
peace.
and Howard all the way into the Grand Palace
tribe's
Conference
royal
Hall.
family
and indigenous
I have
people
something
were
to
in
discuss
an uproar.
with the two outsiders.
They looked at Kale in shock.
Please move to the side hall.
Although
and
they
wait
were
for a moment.
isolated, it didn't mean
The
that
Black
they didn't
Panther
pay attention
King
to
turned
collecting
around and
important
gave the order
information from the
majestically.
outside world. The royal family
Symbol of
members looked at
peace.
each other, but they still
One
obeyed
person
and
oppressing
retreated
a
to the
country,
side hall
ending
of the
a world
palace.
war.
The Black
godlike
Panther King
superhero.
walked into the palace hall first.
As long
and
as
sat
one
on the
was on
throne
Earth,
reserved for
it
the
was
King of
difficult
China.
not
to know about this
He
living
waved
legend.
his hand and said,
"Mr.
Come in
Kale,
and have a
why did
seat,
you come to my
guests from
country?"
afar.
T'Chaka
Kale did not
asked
stand on
excitedly.
ceremony with him.
Kale didn't think
He
much of it.
casually sat down on a chair
He
in the
slightly
hall,
tilted his
and
chin
Howard
and
followed
gestured
suit
to
and
Howard
sat
standing
beside
behind
him.
TCH,
My friend,
the
Howard,
Black Panther
is the
on
founder
throne
of Stark
stretched out his
Industries.
claws and took off his
He is
beast-shaped
also an
Black
explorer.
Panther helmet, revealing
He
a
said
dark
that there
and
is
weathered
suspected
square face.
vibranium ore here and
His
asked me
hair
to
was
bring him
already
here to
white
look
from
for it.
old age, and his face was still
Unfortunately,
full of
we
fatigue.
found
the city of the future.
It was obvious that he
He
had
got
not
lost
recovered
inside
from the
and
fierce battle
accidentally
just
broke
now.
into this ceremony.
Kale Doff,
America's
that's how
war
it
hero,
is.
the youngest retired
T'Chaka
general,
suddenly
the
understood
legendary
and
hero
didn't question
known
as
Kale, symbol of peace.
As long
in the
as one
outside
had lived
world.
in the
United States,
Howard
especially
Stark,
in New York,
America's New
reverence
Yorker,
for Kale
the person
had
in
almost
charge
become
of
a culture
scientific
under the
strategy
influence
during
of
the
the
war.
environment. The founder of Stark Industries,
everyone was a fan of Kale.
scientist. The female
old
guard
king
captain
smiled
noticed
faintly
that something
and
was
briefly
wrong with
described
Taishaka's
Kale's
tone,
Howard's
and her
identities.
expression turned ugly. He asked solemnly,
She coldly
both
reminded,
of you are
Your
outstanding
Highness,
figures in the outside world.
whether he is a symbol of peace
Why did
or
you come
someone
to
else,
this remote
he is
and
now an
independent
outsider
country
who has infiltrated our
Before
country.
Kale could answer,
Moreover,
Howard said
he has
sincerely,
destroyed
Your
the
Majesty,
throne challenge
you should know the
ceremony.
attraction of advanced
His
technology
crime is
to a
unforgivable.
scientist. We must
Forgive
not
me
let
for
him
my
go.
impudence just now and
As
disrupting
soon as
your
these
son's
words came
challenge
out,
for the throne,
a portion of the indigenous
Howard
people
paused
agreed.
and asked, "But your country
Yes,
is so
national
advanced
laws
and
and
developed.
regulations cannot be violated.
Why don't you announce it to the outside world?
Why do you hate
Chapter
outsiders so
141.
much?" As a
The
prince who
outside
would
world's
soon inherit
perception
the
of
throne of
Wakanda
Wakanda
is only that of an
T'Chaka
independent,
should be biased
barbaric,
towards the
and
royalty
undeveloped
and natives of his
agricultural
own
country.
It's
If
not
the
that we
intruder
don't want
was
to open
anyone
it to the
else,
outside
T'Chaka
world.
would have issued an order
It's
to kill
because
them
since
on the
ancient
spot
times,
according to the country's
Wakanda
laws
has been
and
invaded by
regulations.
people from the outside
But
world
the other
because
party
of our
was the
vibranium
symbol of
resources
peace,
and
kale.
advanced technology.
One of the most
For
untouchable
the sake of
people on this
vibranium,
planet.
their reckless and crazy
Not to mention
actions
his
have disturbed
influence and
us who have been
connections.
living here
Just his
peacefully.
personal strength alone
The
was
old
enough to
king
make
shook
him
his
stand
head
and
and
said
said
helplessly,
helplessly,
"We don't intend to
in other
use
words,
vibranium
as
or
a dual
advanced
symbol of
technology
war
to
and
invade
peace,
and
the
occupy the
existence of the
territories
man
of
in
other
front of him
countries.
represented an era.
But some outsiders are full of ambition, trying to destroy this country and plunder its resources.
What is the prince waiting for?"
Kale nodded in agreement.
Under the fierce cries of the surrounding
Even he was
royalty,
a little jealous
the
of the
6 female
resources that
guards
Wakanda
wielded
had.
vibranium spears
That was
ready
an
to
almost
launch a siege.
inexhaustible supply of vibranium.
Under the public criticism, Kale's face was calm as he stood at
Resources
the edge
such as
of the
gems,
platform with
gold,
Howard.
coal, and
Behind
oil
them
were
was a
simply
waterfall
too weak
cliff
in
with a drop
comparison.
of nearly 100 meters.
If not for the
water
fact that he
vapor
was about to
lingering
leave
in the
Earth,
air,
he was afraid that
Wait,
in the next
let
10
me
years,
think about how to
family
deal with
Cal's
this
forces
matter.
would have developed and started their
T'Chaka
development
gritted his
plan
teeth,
to occupy
his mind
and rule
spinning
Wakanda.
rapidly.
As
He
for
thought
now,
to himself,
Wakanda
if
was
I
the
let
second
Mr.
superpower
Kale go directly,
besides the ancient
I'll be
one that
violating
Kale
the
was
country's
interested
rules
in.
set by my ancestors.
Because these forces,
in
like
the eyes of
family
the
Cal,
royalty and
had
natives,
jumped out of the
they'll
ordinary
think that I'm a
that was
coward
Earth
and look
and
down
could
on
see
him.
the sea and stars
But
beyond
if I
the
don't
well.
do anything and let the
Your
guards take
Majesty,
action,
the consequences.
Kale smiled and
T'Chaka
straightforwardly
didn't dare
threw
to
out
think
his
further.
thoughts. I'm here to talk
Although
about
he was very
cooperation with
confident in
Wakanda.
the country's technology and
Cooperation.
combat weapons, if the opponent
The king
was
was
Kale,
stunned and
his
rejected
confidence
in a
would
deep
vanish
voice.
without a trace.
Wakanda will always maintain
Prince
its position as an
T'Chaka,
independent country and
don't
will
think
not have
too
much
contact with the outside
This is
world,
Wakanda,
let alone
even a
talk
dragon
about
will have to stay
cooperation.
down.
Is that
With
really
so
the
many
case?
of us attacking together,
Kale
we'll
smiled.
definitely be
If
able
you don't
to
have
subdue
any
him.
interest in the outside
The
world,
female guard
how would you know
captain
about
walked
the
onto
information of the
platform,
two of us
holding
and even
the
sent
vibranium
Prince
sword in her
T'Chaka out
hand?
to study in America?
It was obvious that
The
she
king
had forgotten
felt
the pain
silent.
after the scar healed
Kale
and faced
continued,
Kale with
if I'm not
renewed
wrong,
courage.
Your Majesty has
You
been
guys
collecting
don't know
information
enough
about the
this man.
outside world for an opportunity.
He's really strong.
An opportunity to let Wakanda
He's not
stand
afraid of all
fearlessly
of
on
us
the world
here.
stage.
T'Chaka
Wakanda
sighed.
may reveal its existence
He was
to
in
the
a
outside
dilemma.
world in the future.
He was
but
constantly
definitely
weighing
not
the
now.
pros and cons,
The king
trying
said
to come
with
up
a
with
deep
a perfect
gaze.
solution.
Kale
But
spread out
time
his
was
hands
not waiting
unhurriedly.
for him.
That's why I said
Kale was
cooperation.
protecting Howard and confronting the 7 Kings' elite guards.
Under the tense
Chapter
atmosphere,
145.
an unstoppable battle could
It was
break
simple
out at
logic.
any moment. Kale
I
had
can't
no
enter the
interest
mirror
in whether or
dimension
not
yet,
Wakanda
still
wanted
in
to
cooldown.
disclose their country's situation
If
to
we
the
really
outside
fight
world.
later,
I'll find an opportunity
what he wanted to
open
discuss
a portal
with the
and
king
cover
was
you
the
to leave this
technological
place.
cooperation between
Kale
family
whispered.
Cal and Wakanda.
Howard, who was
The old
behind
king
him,
was a
nodded
smart
in
man
agreement.
and naturally understood
He
what
knew
Kale
that
meant.
with his strength, he would
After
only
a
be
moment
a
of
burden if he
silence,
stayed.
he said, "So,
Be careful.
this is a
Your
technological
body.
cooperation without
Howard said
revealing
worriedly.
Wakanda's information to the outside
worry.
world. If it
That's
was just
right.
me, I would have at least
Kale
5
nodded.
ways to escape."
Howard also looked
Kale
at the
chuckled.
king
He
expectantly.
did not put this country's
This
elite
was an
female
opportunity
bodyguard
for the
in his
door of
eyes.
technology.
With the support
No matter
of
how good
Wakanda's
their
advanced
weapons
technology,
were, even if they were
he
fully
believed that
equipped
many
with
of the black
vibranium
technology
equipment,
products
their
that were
physical
still in the
fitness was
theoretical
only in the
stage
range
could
of
be
human
produced in
values.
advance, saving
They
decades
could not
of time.
threaten him at all.
Then,
I
how do you
haven't
plan to
exercised my
cooperate with
muscles for
Wakanda?
2 weeks.
The king's face
Kale
was
looked at
solemn
the
as he
female
said
bodyguards
slowly,
and hooked
"I don't
his
mean to
finger in
look
a
down
cold
on
and
you."
provocative manner.
Stark Industries' new mobile
T'Chaka's
phone
eyes
and computer
twitched.
products are all geniuses
This war
of the
hero
century.
was just like the rumors.
Stark Industries can
He was
stand
so
at the top of
domineering no matter
technology
what
in
the
the
outside
situation
world
was, but this
The
alone
female
is not enough to
bodyguards looked at
cooperate
each
with
other.
Wakanda's science and
Their eyes
technology
were filled with
department.
the flames of anger.
Kale and Howard looked
How
at
could
each
they
other
hold
and
back?
couldn't help but smile.
They held their
"Your
vibranium
Majesty,
spears and charged
Stark
forward.
Industries naturally can't compare
Bring it
to the
on."
current Wakanda in the field
Kale
of
smiled
science,
coldly,
but we have the technological
he was ready
treasure
to
of the
fight
new
them
era
head-on.
in our hands. However,
We just
he
don't
suddenly
have the
sensed
ability to
something and
develop
quickly
and looked up.
manufacture it yet. A humanoid Howard's face was full of smiles as he replied with certainty. It somersaulted a few times in the air and landed lightly in the middle of the platform. He was still confident in his own achievements in the field of splashed water and cutting-edge technology that he had mastered with Kale's help. Its black cloak fluttered in the wind. The king asked. The dark metal armor was like a layer of cuticle that clung to the surface of its body, not knowing how to explain. Its mask was shaped like a panther's face. Why don't you let Howard take you to understand it on the helmet? Its claws were so sharp that they glinted coldly. Personally, it was like the natural king of this land, understand the strong. He saw Kale stand up from his seat and put on a ring on his left finger. The Black Panther stood in the middle of the platform and his right hand moved in a circle, and bright sparks spun into a wheel in front of him. The 7 female bodyguards reacted quickly, and a portal was formed and fixed in the main hall of the palace. Royal family of each tribe through the gorgeous circular outside the cliff. One could see the scene of the research lab on the other side. The scene was quite spectacular. Kale smiled faintly. "Father, this is the portal to New York in the United States." He greeted the man in the Black Panther armor affectionately. "Then go through this portal with Howard and see the technology we have mastered. You have not ascended the throne Unbelievable. This matter is not one of the technologies that you have mastered." The current Black Panther stood up from his throne in shock and approached the portal to check it out. "Yes. This isn't science." T'Chaka nodded and retreated to the stone steps inside the platform. Howard corrected and led the way together with his mother's royal family. "My king, we have technology that Wakanda has yet to master." The Black Panther ordered the female bodyguards, "I will bring you to the research lab of Stark Industries." The female bodyguards obeyed and hurriedly put away their vibranium spears. The king agreed without hesitation, of the platform, not worried that it was a trap or a lie. Only the Black Panther he followed Howard through the portal and left the main hall of the palace. Were left on the platform. Kale, on the other hand, 2 outsiders maintained the teleportation portal. The Black Panther king turned around and glanced. He returned to his seat in the main hall, crossed his legs. He looked up and waited at Kale with dignity. Mutual understanding was an important prerequisite for long-term servile nor overbearing. Kale believed that the new element that could replace unlimited energy and the semi-artificial intelligence that had all basic intelligence of a strong warrior. These 2 technological products that could change the world would be able to recognize the Wakanda king. Then he was flat. 10 minutes later, he didn't care before if you were a king and Howard returned. The female guard of His Highness suddenly called out from outside the main hall. One-on-one. Then, the tightly shut door of the palace's main hall opened. Only one side surrenders or dies will be considered victorious. Who was dressed in a formal black ceremonial attire, walked in. Kale looked up from his seat. T'Chaka had only changed a set of clothes, but his aura was strong. His eyes were sharp and dignified. His every movement carried the aura of a king. He now had the same dark blue card as the king. Black Panther Legacy, the power inheritance of the Black Panther. Rare blue ability card. Wakanda royalty, after inheriting the throne, received the name of the Black Panther. The Black Panther ate a heart-shaped herb, greatly enhancing its senses and physical characteristics. It also gained superhuman speed, sharpness, strength, and endurance. Can be used to remove the Black Panther's power through another potion. Current status, unable to draw. So this is the effect of the heart-shaped herb. Kale was amazed. The Black Panther legacy granted a physique that was not inferior to the super soldier when he was injected with the potion. The only drawback was that this was not a complete mutation. It was only through the heart-shaped herb that he borrowed the Black Panther's power. He could no longer rely on training to break through. His natural aging and lifespan was no different from an ordinary person. "Mr. Kale, why are you only here? Why are you the only one here? Where's my father and your friend?" T'Chaka walked into the hall and was stunned for a second when he saw Kyle alone. "They are in New York." Kale pointed at the portal in the middle of the main hall and briefly explained the situation. "I see." T'Chaka breathed a sigh of relief. He approached Kale and sat on the seat beside him. Kale looked at him in surprise. "You're not afraid of me? And you believed my words so easily? Of course, you're a legendary hero who symbolizes peace." T'Chaka nodded matter-of-factly with a smile on his face. "Besides, even my father believes you now. This proves that my judgment was not wrong. Your father is a good king." Kale commented softly. "Yes, of course he is a good king, and a good father." T'Chaka smiled bitterly. "I know. Father did not care about his old body and proposed a battle with you. He wanted to let the people know your strength and not rigidly follow the law to be your enemy. He said bitterly, he sacrificed his invincible glory today to pave the way for me to inherit the throne. At the same time, he planted a seed in the hearts of Wakanda's people. A seed that yearns for the outside world and no longer resists outsiders. T'Chaka. You are very wise and smart. Under your leadership, Wakanda might really face the world one day and announce everything to the world. Kale said with a smile. I also hope that day will come soon. T'Chaka took a deep breath and was full of ambition. At this moment, Howard and the king returned to the main hall through the portal. Father. T'Chaka hurriedly got up and stepped forward. The king held his hand and said to Kyle, it just so happens that T'Chaka is here. On behalf of Wakanda, I promise to carry out preliminary cooperation with Stark Industries in the field of technology. Tomorrow, T'Chaka will officially become king and our cooperation will be arranged by him. Very good. Kale nodded. Although he had expected this, he was secretly relieved when he heard the king's words. But I have a condition that I hope you can agree to. The king said in a deep voice. What condition? Tell me first. Kale pondered and asked. I hope you can be a teacher and teach T'Chaka martial arts at the right time. Chapter 146. In the end, Kale agreed to half of the conditions proposed by the Panther King. The other half was that he would teach T'Chaka combat techniques at the right time, but it would only be for 1 to 2 months. After 2 months, Logan, who was proficient in hundreds of combat techniques, would be the combat instructor. The king and T'Chaka were surprised and asked about the reason. Kale did not hide much and directly revealed to them that his super soldier's body had been eroded by nuclear radiation, causing the genes to slowly mutate in his body. Knowing this, the king and T'Chaka immediately expressed their willingness to use Wakanda's advanced medical technology to examine and treat Kale's body. Kale originally wanted to refuse, but he could not resist Howard's persuasion. In the end, he still went to Wakanda's underground biological medical department for the third genetic diagnosis. The medical staff of Wakanda had mastered the advanced technology of the century, and their medical standards had also reached the standards of the 21st century. However, after a detailed examination of Kale's body, they were still shocked by his body's illness. Nuclear radiation was not a natural product. It represented the highest indiscriminate destructive weapon that humans on Earth possessed in modern times and even in the future. As for genetic mutation, humans still could not give a simple definition to it. The mutation of genetic DNA had infinite possibilities of life. The upper limit might allow humans to become godlike high-level creatures, the lower limit might allow humans to revert to low-level creatures like apes. Moreover, the genetic mutation in Kale's body was as uncontrollable as the Big Bang. Under a large amount of nuclear radiation, the genes were irreversibly modified and reorganized. If it was not for the self-healing factor maintaining the suppression, it might have caused his perfect body, which was 10 times that of a human's, to collapse. Unbelievable. It's as if there's a small sun's energy hidden in your body. When it gives you superpower in the future, your body will not be able to withstand it and self-destruct. We can't do anything about this. Medicine still has a long way to go in order to stabilize the human body's genetic structure. The medical staff of Wakanda helplessly gave a diagnosis of incurable and specified the time limit for Kale's body to walk towards death, 213 days. It was around 7 months, which was almost the same as Howard's second diagnosis. Faced with this bad news, Howard's face was filled with sadness. His lips were tightly shut, and he was so upset that he couldn't speak. Even the joy of reaching a preliminary cooperation with Wakanda in the field of science and technology was completely washed away. Above the king, below the god, Howard said to himself regretfully. Kale was only 24 years old this year. At this high-spirited age, he was already a retired hero who ended the war in the human world, a symbol of peace in the future era, a legendary figure who was loved and supported by tens of thousands of people. Unfortunately, it was as if he could not escape the curse of war. The nuclear radiation from the last battle led him to the end of the road. No matter how powerful he was still a human, not a god. In the end, he was unable to transcend certain matters. When the king and T'Chaka heard this unfortunate news, they were also deeply saddened and repeatedly lamented that the heavens were jealous of heroic talents. "Don't worry, you guys should live a little longer. Who knows, maybe we'll meet again in a certain era." Kale smiled. He was actually very optimistic and calm about this. After all, he didn't expect the current Wakanda to have the medical technology to save him. In the end, he still had to step onto that unknown and distant path of the universe. Since he had already made his choice and resolution, although Kale's illness was becoming more and more obvious, it was as if a raging fire had ignited in his heart. His fighting spirit and faith became more and more resolute. He had already overcome all the difficulties of the war. There was no reason for him to lose to himself in the end. For 2 consecutive days, Kale and Howard stayed in Wakanda to witness King T'Chaka's coronation ceremony. On the day of T'Chaka's coronation, he immediately announced that the country's scientific research department and Stark Industries, Family Cal, would begin a preliminary cooperation in the field of science and technology. As the person in charge of Stark Industries, Howard signed a cooperation agreement with King T'Chaka. Kale and the Old King were the witnesses of this historic scene. This was the first time Wakanda broke the thousands of years of isolation of the country and actively tried to maintain a good relationship with the outside world. It was also a good foundation for the country to open up to the world and integrate with the outside world in the future. In the meantime, Kale taught T'Chaka combat skills at the right time. After that, he hurriedly returned to America with Howard. Obtaining cooperation in the field of science and technology with Wakanda inevitably increased the number of things for the two of them to do. Howard started to use the vibranium processing materials provided by the Wakanda Kingdom according to the new elemental design blueprint, trying to create acceleration and solidification energy equipment. Kale returned to the family manor and continued to give super agent ability cards to train trainees. At the same time, he was working on a fixed portal for the Mage organization. Using a fixed portal to connect the family base on Dragon Turtle Island overseas, the Stark Industries building in New York, and the Wakanda Kingdom in Africa. This was an important part of Family Cal's long-term development plan. Usually, Kale would also perfect the rules and regulations of Family Cal. Other than that, as if to prevent the family from noticing the abnormality in his body, he basically never left the second floor of the manor. Family Cal was on the right track. The number of trainees in the family was increasing. Logan, Yutong, and the others were immersed in their daily work as instructors and supervisors. They did not notice the abnormality of the head of the family, Kale. 10 days passed in such a peaceful and comfortable manner. The main building of Family Cal's manor. The main hall on the first floor was quiet. Only 2 young maids were cleaning the place. They were busy cleaning the place, meticulously cleaning up the dust in the corners. In the main hall, there was a new portal. The frame was made of pure metal, and the door handle was a circular control device. Mysterious light and shadow were reflected in the door. One could vaguely see the basement of Stark Industries on the other side. Tap tap, as the sound of footsteps slowly approached, the maids hurriedly raised their heads and saw a beautiful woman dressed as an urban professional. She stepped through the fixed portal in her high heels. Her top was a suit jacket, and the bottom was a long skirt that wrapped around her legs. Her blonde hair was tied up high, and her movements were capable and elegant. "Hello, Madame Lucy." The 2 maids greeted her sweetly and hurriedly went forward. "How many times have I told you not to call me Madam?" Lucy's fair face was slightly red. She placed her hands on her small waist and pretended to glare fiercely at the maids. "Yes, Sister Lucy." The maids smiled and hurriedly corrected themselves. To them, Lucy was the easiest person to get along with among the few people with high status in the family. "Why is it so quiet today? Where are the others?" Lucy was surprised. She looked around with her beautiful eyes. Usually, the trainees would not be quiet during their training. Wolf King, Scarlet Eye, and Black Widow. The three of them brought the trainees to Afghanistan. They said that they were going out to train, the maid replied. What about the head of the family? Lucy asked expectantly. For the past few days, she had been working as a financial manager in the Stark Industries building. She was diligently learning to take over Family Cal's future funds. Chapter 147. Master is in the master's conference room on the second floor. He hasn't left the manor these days. The maid replied respectfully. When Lucy heard this, she couldn't help but smile brightly. She pouted her lips and said with a girl's nature, that war maniac actually didn't go out with Logan and the others. But this way, it's great. We can share the world of the two of us. She couldn't wait to step upstairs. Suddenly, she thought of something and turned around to show her figure and dress. She asked the maid, "Is my dress okay today?" The two maids quickly nodded. After a few words of praise, they seemed to know what Lucy was concerned about and added, "Master will definitely like it when he sees it." That's good. Lucy's slender hand patted her high chest that had begun to form and slightly breathed a sigh of relief. Her originally perfect and delicate face was now added with light makeup and a professional suit. She looked a little less naive and a little more mature. Then I'll go to the second floor. Bring up some red wine and snacks later, Lucy ordered. Before the maid responded, she lifted her skirt and hurriedly trotted upstairs. On the second floor of the manor, in the master's conference room, Lucy knocked on the wooden door. A deep and magnetic male voice came from inside, "Come in." Quickly opening the wooden door, Lucy stepped into the room. Her beautiful eyes followed the light and cast into the large room. Her eyes locked onto the blonde youth wearing casual clothes. He stood with his back to the door and stood at the edge of the vintage window. His tall and strong physique covered most of the light from the window, leaving the person who came in with a tall and cold back. "Cale," Lucy murmured softly, full of love. She trotted forward and wrapped her arms around the young man's strong waist, her chest completely pressed against his broad back. "Lucy, you're back," Cale whispered. He grabbed the girl's hand and held it in his palm. "If I don't come back here, where else can I go?" Lucy chuckled and naughtily stuck out her pink tongue. She complained in a low voice, "If you didn't insist that I manage Family Cal's finances, I wouldn't have to go to New York to study economic management." "How's your study?" Cale asked with rare interest. "It's not very difficult compared to the medical courses I studied before. Also, when I worked in Stark Industries, many colleagues took care of me and taught me professional knowledge," Lucy said softly. "There are still quite a lot of good people." Cale chuckled and shrugged his shoulders. Although Howard had retired behind the scenes as a full-time researcher, he was still the boss of the industry on the surface, and Lucy had been recommended by Howard to temporarily work at Stark Industries. She was a person who got in through connections. Stark Industries can be independent and let it maintain independent operations. Family Cal's other businesses haven't been expanded yet. The income and expenses of the finance department aren't much, so it's still easy to manage. Lucy was full of confidence. "That's good. I can rest assured in the future." Cale narrowed his eyes and looked at the beautiful scenery outside the window. He suddenly stopped talking and did not continue. "Rest assured about what?" Lucy raised her head in confusion and asked. "Nothing." Cale seemed to want to cover this topic, but the more deliberately he tried to cover it up, the more Lucy keenly noticed that something was wrong. "It's not nothing. You're a little abnormal today." "Ah, Cale, your hand." Lucy was extremely shocked. Her delicate hand held Cale's big hand tightly. Only then did she realize that his hand was a little cold. It was far from the warmth of a stove. "Cale, you even have to hide it from me. What happened?" Under Lucy's anxious repeated questions, Cale sighed slightly. He took a deep breath and turned around to face Lucy. Your hair. Lucy's beautiful eyes widened. She trembled when she saw this incredible scene. She reached out to touch Kale's temples. The blonde hair there had turned silver white. Yes. The originally dazzling blonde hair that was like sunlight had naturally turned silver white. It was as if the vitality of youth had faded away. Lucy, go to the sofa. I'll tell you everything. Kale said calmly. When he woke up in the morning and found that his hair had turned silver white, he knew that there was no way to hide it from Family Cal's members, especially Lucy. Although he could barely hide it with the camouflage effect of venom, his physical condition was getting worse day by day. It was no longer necessary. It was time to tell Family Cal about his body's genetic mutation and his plans to leave Earth. Kale wiped the tears from the corners of Lucy's eyes. He hugged the girl's trembling body and sat on the sofa in the conference room. This matter started from Nissan, Tokyo. Kale didn't hide it anymore. He told Lucy about his body's genetic mutation and the corresponding future plans. The genetic mutation directly endangers my life. There are still about 6 months left. However, I don't have much time left on Earth. I estimate that in a month, I will leave Earth and go to the universe. By the time Kyle finished speaking, Lucy, who was in his arms, had already burst into tears. Her tears fell like pearls, wetting their clothes. Why did you hide such an important matter from us? Lucy's chest rose and fell rapidly as she sobbed angrily. Because I don't want you to know that the seemingly omnipotent family head has become a terminally ill genetic patient. Kale said with a smile. Some time ago, once his body's critical condition was announced, Family Cal probably wouldn't be able to get on the right track so quickly. Too much emphasis on gains and losses was a habit that Kale couldn't change. Lucy wiped away the tears on her face and stared at Kale with her slightly red eyes. She asked urgently, if you leave Earth and go to the universe, are you sure you can find a way to cure yourself? I can't say for sure. The universe is too big and there are too many dangers. This path may lead to death. Kale said his concerns with a bitter smile. He clenched his fists and said with determination in his eyes, I am very afraid of death, so I will fight to the last moment. I will not die so easily. Lucy smiled through her tears. After thinking for a while, she asked, if you are alive and cured, how long will it take for you to come back? I don't know. Maybe 10, 50, or even 100 years. Kale said. When he saw Lucy's eyes dim, he added, but no matter what, as long as I am alive, I will definitely come back. I believe you. Lucy nodded. Her face was unprecedentedly serious as she looked at Kale seriously. After you leave, I will wait here for you to come back. Whether it is 50 years or 100 years, I will wait until I die. Chapter 148. After a few years of World War II, the long darkness of gunfire broke out. From 1945 on Earth A.D., humans licked the wounds of war and continued to move forward. They yearned for peace, and the economic system gradually recovered and sprouted like plants bathed in spring rain. Everyone seemed to want to erase the pain left by the war, so they didn't want to recall it. They began to yearn for a new life and worked hard to pursue the beautiful things of happiness. Statues of the symbol of peace had been spread throughout the central squares of American cities, war memorials, and even conspicuous corners of the streets and alleys. However, the name of superhero was getting weaker and weaker, and it was no longer on people's lips. The times created heroes. The era of war heroes came to an end with the end of the war, and the first group of heroes officially retired from the stage of history. Perhaps some people often told their children about the inspirational story of a certain dwarf becoming Captain America, about the legendary deeds of the most dazzling star of World War II, but most of the rest were just memories and emotions. Originally, there were almost tens of millions of people who felt sorry for Kale's retirement from the military. They were emotional and jointly petitioned to retain him, but as a few months passed, the voices of such civil organizations became fewer and fewer. In 1945. It was the first day of a brand new year. Time magazine, the New York Times, Washington newspapers, and more than a dozen well-known media outlets jointly published reports about farewell to war and yearning for peace on the cover of Kale, who was wearing a black battle suit. Among them, there was a straightforward article title that sparked heated discussion among the public: "Strife and enemies are gone, the new era no longer needs superheroes." Without war, what was the value of the existence of superheroes? Did the human race really need a god who was above everyone else? Major General Kale's return and retirement from the public may have been the most normal choice. I'm not insulting heroes. The symbol of peace should be a cultural symbol, as a statue, living in everyone's heart, not standing in front of us alive and forcing us to bow our heads. Shut up. We admire him, isn't it normal to bow our heads? That's a man with a glorious battle record and unparalleled glory. He's a legend that's comparable to the gods. Our current stable era was fought for by him. No matter how noisy people argued, it was difficult to hide a fact. Kale. There was no doubt that it represented an era. Now, that era of blood and fire had finally become history in the textbooks as people had forgotten about it on their own. It had completely come to an end. Kale had been in Family Cow's manor all this time, completing the family's affairs before he left. He did not notice the discussions outside. Even if he knew, he would probably just smile faintly and not take it to heart. After all, from the beginning until now, he'd been living for himself, and that included fighting and killing. As for being a superhero, whoever wanted to be one could be one. After Kale confessed everything to Lucy, it was as if a heavy stone had been lifted from his heart. In addition, Lucy expressed her willingness to wait for him. The two of them expressed their feelings for each other, and their feelings for each other rose again. This made Kale even more determined, and his desire to leave Earth and step into the starry sky became even stronger. On the same day, Howard called and brought Kale a very important piece of news: the base fortress on Dragon Turtle Island had been completed. They hired a top construction company and hired 10 large transport ships to transport tools and construction materials. With hundreds of employees working day and night, it took them a month to finally complete the base fortress on Dragon Turtle Island in the Atlantic Ocean. When Kale heard the news, the construction company had already completed the handover, and the workers had all evacuated from Dragon Turtle Island. With a sense of anticipation, Kale and Lucy picked up Howard and the three of them went through the portal to the base island. Ever since Kale summoned the ancient giant dragon turtle, it had been sleeping in the hinterland of the Atlantic Ocean. It had not woken up or moved, so for a month, no one had discovered its terrifying true appearance even though the construction team had been doing a lot of work on its back. On the primitive island on Dragon Turtle's back, an ultramodern, Western-style 3-story building stood on top of a mountain peak. Its circular shape was very high-tech, and it reflected a silver metallic luster under the sun. Sparks flew from the circular portal as it hovered outside the fortress. Lucy held on to Kale's arm as the two of them stepped out of the portal. Kale looked up and stared at the fortress that was not inferior to the Wakanda Palace in terms of features. He pondered and said, "Howard, how's its defensive capability? If you knew what I mixed into the outer layer of the fortress, you wouldn't be asking this question." Howard, dressed in a gentleman's suit, walked out of the portal and said with a chuckle, "It can't be vibranium, right?" Kale's mouth twitched. "Bingo." Howard said with a smile, "After the initial cooperation with Wakanda, King Chaka said that he could sell me the original vibranium metal, so I added a layer of vibranium to the outer wall of this almost completed building. The vibranium outer wall can withstand even a concentrated missile bombardment. I've really troubled you," Kale said with emotion. Now, there were only 2 fixed portals that were built in a rush. One was from the manor to the basement of Stark Industries, and the other was from Stark Industries to the Wakanda Kingdom. While Howard was researching in the field of technology, he also put in a lot of effort to buy vibranium metal from Wakanda and had it flown to Dragon Turtle Island to complete the fortress. His efforts could be seen from this. Why are you fussing with me? Isn't this fortress also my future shelter? Howard smiled and walked towards the sealed metal door of the fortress. Don't worry, I'll show you something even more shocking later. Howard walked to the door, took a deep breath, and said to the door, Jarvis, open the door. Voice recognition activated. Detection successful. Permission granted. It was accompanied by a mechanical male voice. A camera poked out from the wall above and aimed at Howard in front of the door for a second recognition. The metal door opened quickly. Welcome back, Mr. Howard. When Kyle saw this, he blinked and said, You even brought your family's supercomputer over? As if recognizing Kale's words, the loudspeaker at the door spoke again, Welcome back, Master Kale. That's funny. Lucy covered her mouth and laughed. Jarvis said, Welcome back, Madam Lucy. This AI system. Lucy bit her lips and buried her face in her chest, blushing. It seems that Jarvis's performance has become more human and intelligent. Kale commented. This is just a voice system that has been completely integrated with the supercomputer. It's still an AI system that operates according to the instructions I entered in advance. It's still not considered a human being that can think and make judgments. It's still far from a true AI. Chapter 149. Inside the base fortress, through the special floor-to-ceiling windows, one could overlook the entire island below and the scenery of the sea outside. The fortress's security system is controlled by Jarvis's AI butler 24/7. There are many Skynet probes on the island that work with the external satellites. As long as there are intruders, there will be a warning before they enter the island. Of course, with the camouflage projection equipment provided by Wakanda, this island can be disguised as an active volcanic island, a huge iceberg floating in the sea, or a black tornado. Plus, with the dragon turtle itself that can move in the sea, the existence of this island has been hidden from the world since it was completed. Howard said confidently and walked into the fortress, leading Kale and Lucy in front. Inside the fortress, the floor was smooth and clean. The daytime lights were turned on one by one above their heads, and the projection screen flickered in the hall. Walking along the spacious corridor with a metallic texture, Kyle felt as if he was strolling in a spaceship in the movies. The interior style was filled with a sense of advanced technology. From this, it could be seen that it was undoubtedly designed by Howard, the technology madman. There are a total of 50 individual rooms on the first floor of the fortress. The standard is according to the hotel's highest standards and can be provided to ordinary family members. They can only use the rooms after entering their personal information with Jarvis. There are 5 core members' rooms and 3 VIP rooms on the second floor, a control room with a supercomputer, and a round-table conference room for family meetings. The top floor is the only master room. Currently, only you have access to it. Howard paused and looked at Lucy, who was beside Kale. Then upgrade Lucy's access level, Kale said calmly. Lucy was so embarrassed that she could not speak. Every floor of the fortress, including the rooms, requires a sufficient level of access. The top 3 floors are the daily living area. There's nothing special about it. I'll bring you down to take a look. Howard smiled mysteriously and led the 2 of them to the elevator on the first floor. The elevator was located in the center of the fortress. It was cylindrical in shape and seemed to be made of pure glass. It was so transparent that one could see the outside. There were only a few inconspicuous metal frames and steel cables. Jarvis, slow down the elevator. Let's take a closer look at the underground structure of the fortress. Howard gave the command. The semi-artificial intelligence butler system, while verifying the user's authority, used a system program to analyze the content of the command. Yes, sir. The elevator closed, and after a slight tremor, it slowly descended with the 3 people inside. This is... Kale's eyes widened. What entered his eyes was an empty darkness. The bottom of the 3-story fortress was actually hollow. No, it should be said that the island mountain where the fortress was located had been hollowed out, and a basement that was far more spacious than the upper level had been built. The elevator was located in the middle of the dark void. As it slowly moved down, all the lights on the first floor of the basement suddenly lit up, like a bright halo that surrounded the elevator. The first floor of the basement is the training room. It can accommodate up to 100 people training at the same time. There is a physical training room, a gun room, a combat room. Before Howard finished, Kale excitedly asked quickly, "Is there a gravity room?" Gravity room, that was the best place for superhuman physical training. Of course, there is a gravity room that you want. Howard shrugged and proudly stroked his mustache. After my modifications, that gravity room can accommodate up to 10 people training, and the highest gravity can reach is 12 times. 12 times? Kale was shocked. Even he couldn't get used to the increased gravity. Even Logan, Natasha, and the others had to crawl when they came in, not to mention those people who just got super special agent abilities. Howard nodded and said, "Actually, it can be increased to 15 times, but 12 times is already big enough. For normal people, 3 times is already the limit of what they can train to. 15 times. I'll die." Lucy patted her chest as her heart palpitated. Kale nodded. 15 times was already a forbidden zone for normal people. The terrifying pressure would crush people to the ground. Even if they didn't die immediately, the blood circulation in the body would be blocked. When standing, even the brain wouldn't have enough blood and oxygen. The elevator kept going down and reached the 2nd floor of the basement. "This is the Scientific Strategy Research Room, right?" Kale said with a smile. Through the transparent elevator, he could vaguely see a lot of scientific research equipment in the lit-up rooms. "That's right. The 2nd floor of the basement is the research room for the frontiers of science. It is currently my personal office area. After the cooperation with Wakanda, the new elemental energy, artificial intelligence, and so on will be manufactured and perfected here." Howard's words were equivalent to tying his future to his family's territory on this island. He knew that although Dragon Turtle Island was far away in the open sea, it would be very convenient to go in and out of Stark Industries and Wakanda after a fixed portal was set up. It was safe, hidden, well-equipped, and convenient to go out. For Howard, this was the research place of his dreams. "Here, I can explore the truth of science with peace of mind." Howard rubbed his palms and suppressed the excitement in his heart. He couldn't wait to go in and continue the unfinished experimental production of the new elemental acceleration. Kale was his guide, constantly opening the door to the truth of science for him. Wakanda had plenty of advanced scientific resources. Kale provided the future technology products and theories, the stable and comfortable research site on Dragon Turtle Island, and the infinite equations that delayed his lifespan. Howard was also surprised to find that he had officially embarked on an unknown scientific path that surpassed countless scientists before him. With such a good environment and conditions, even a pig would be able to pry into the door of the truth of science given a certain amount of time. Not to mention, Howard was a genius engineer who believed that his aptitude was no worse than any top scientist in history. "Kale, if you go to the universe, it will be the worst outcome, you will never come back. I will work hard to explore the truth of science and strive to use the power of science and technology to save you." Howard looked at Kale solemnly, his tone serious and determined. After seeing the metaphysics of crossing space, Howard didn't abandon science. Instead, he became even more obsessed and fanatical. He didn't believe that the power of science and technology that had reached the end of the universe couldn't cross space or even reverse time and space. "Okay, buddy, it's a deal." Kale hugged the sorrowful Lucy with one hand and patted Howard's shoulder, saying sincerely, "Family Cal, I'll leave it to you. The path for family Cal was basically paved. Chapter 150. Another month passed. Family Cal, K2, and other family members had secretly moved to the base fortress on Dragon Turtle Island through the portal. The original manor was left as a stronghold for the family to secretly train new members. It was also an indirect way to watch over the frozen winter soldier in the basement of the manor. During this time, Kale once again gave the Super Agent card to train 10 K2. He also used special materials to build a third fixed portal to connect the island base, Stark Industries, and Wakanda Kingdom, 3 places that were far away from each other. At the same time, his genetic mutation disease could no longer be hidden from the other members of Family Cal. After all, although there were not many abnormalities in his body, his bright blonde hair had completely turned into a sickly silver-white color. In about 6 months' time, Kale would face the super soldier constitution. His body would be forced to undergo genetic mutation by the irreversible nuclear radiation in his body, and his body would automatically collapse and disintegrate into a functional death. When Logan, Yutong, and Natasha heard this serious news, they were shocked to the point of disbelief. It took them a long time to gradually accept this subversive reality. Kale, the family leader they were loyal to. He was recognized as the strongest man in the world. He had always been on the battlefield as a super soldier. From when he was a recruit to when he retired as a major general, he had a 100% winning rate in all battles, big or small. With his own strength, he changed the situation of the war, killed the Hydra organization, and forced the Samurai Kingdom to surrender. This legendary figure standing at the top of the pyramid was known as a god-level hero and a symbol of peace. Now that World War II was over, when everyone was looking forward to peace and pursuing happiness, his body was still suffering from the terminal illness of war. It was like becoming an old man. As the end of his life approached, his body's genetic mutation accelerated. His body was unstable and he would even lose his superpower for a short period of time every day. After Lucy personally told them this news, Logan and Yutong immediately looked for Kale to verify it. They proposed on the spot that they were willing to leave Earth with him and go to the universe. Kale rejected both of them. To him, the universe was full of unknown dangers. There was not much difference between one person and 3 people. Furthermore, Logan and Yutong were Family Cal's top fighting forces. If they left Earth with him, the Family Cal would really be in shambles. Don't worry. Take care of the house. I will definitely come back alive. Kale promised them seriously. Although Logan and Yutong were helpless, they couldn't persuade Kale, who had already made his decision. Thus, on the island base, the family members were collectively depressed. Time passed day by day, and there were only 3 days left until Kale's estimated date of departure. In the last 3 days, Kale put aside all the family affairs and entered the gravity room to warm up, practice the more than 100 fighting skills he had, and check the weapons, equipment, and cards he had. The item cards stored in the card space, gold, gems, cannons, firearms, and miscellaneous items were all placed in the base's inventory and handed over to Lucy, who was in charge of the family's finances, to manage. Kale only kept emergency food, laser pistols, planes, tanks, and other useful items for himself. He was about to embark on an extremely dangerous journey. He would either transform and return, or turn into a small pile of wreckage in the corner of the vast universe and be buried in a foreign land outside Earth. This time, even Kale was not confident. On Marvel's Earth, he still had the advantage of being a transmigrator, knowing all kinds of known and unknown dangers, and the main historical storyline. But once he left Earth, he would have to rely on himself to explore everything. Dragon Turtle Base, the gravity room on the 2nd floor of the basement. Under the bright focusing light, Kale was standing upside down, doing push-ups with one hand. His silver-white hair was wet with sweat and flowed down along his hair, forming a puddle of water on the bright and clean floor. 10:23, 10:24, 10:25, his chest was moving up and down rapidly. He was only wearing a pair of sweatpants, and his perfect physique was straight and straight. His muscles and abdominal muscles were firm as if they were made of steel. Super soldier peak physique 10 times that of a human, self-healing factor, these are all in my body. They are deep in my blood, bone marrow, and even engraved in my genes. Even if the gene mutation is suppressed, it won't be that easy to take away what belongs to me. Kale's will was firm, and he maintained his fighting spirit. He did not want to be devoured by the mutated gene and become an ordinary person. Beep beep. As the mechanical door of the gravity room opened, Natasha, who was wearing a tight black leather suit, appeared. When she saw Kale inside, she hurriedly walked in as if she had something to report. "Master, there's news from the New York mansion. Nick Fry has..." Before Natasha could finish her words, she entered the gravity field of the gravity room. She exclaimed and fell hard on the ground. Even her plump breasts under the zipped leather suit were flattened. The gravity has been turned on to the maximum of 12 times? Natasha's face turned red. She used her hands to support her body and looked at Kale, who was still doing one-handed push-ups. Her beautiful eyes were filled with astonishment. This superhuman monster-level physique, how did it look like his body was going to decay and die? "Is Fry already at the New York mansion?" Kale asked. He exerted force on his wrist, and his body turned half a circle in the air. Then, he stood steadily on the ground. "Yes, I'm ready as well. I can go to SHELD anytime." Natasha took a deep breath and said with difficulty. Even with her extraordinary super agent physique, under the influence of 12 times the gravity, her movements were slow and sluggish. Kale nodded and said to the speaker in the room that could receive voice commands, "Jarvis, turn off the gravity and switch to cleaning mode." "Yes, master." Jarvis's voice sounded. He quickly turned off the gravity field in the room according to the settings of the system program. Natasha heaved a sigh of relief and stood up easily from the floor in the room, only to be soaked by the clear water from above her head. It turned out that several shower heads had been turned on the ceiling of the gravity room, and it was raining heavily in the room. 10 seconds later, the sprinkling of water in the gravity room stopped, and dry hot wind blew from the 4 walls. Kale had already taken a simple bath to clean up the stains. He also took out the Venom card and summoned it, which transformed into a set of casual clothes with a hood. Kale put on the ring on his left finger and cast a spell to open the portal to the second floor of the mansion. He urged, "Let's go. I'll arrange a bright path for you. Everything from now on will depend on your own luck." Chapter 151. On the outskirts of New York, in the conference room on the second floor of the former family Cal Manor. "Greetings, Master." Seeing the dazzling portal suddenly appear in the room, 2 well-trained female servants quickly stepped forward. Their faces were filled with respect and joy as they stood on both sides of the portal with their heads bowed and waited for orders. As if he heard the sound, the bald black man sitting on the sofa in the conference room stood up. His blind left eye was covered by a black eye patch, and his remaining right eye was slightly sharp as he looked over. "Go get the bottle of red wine that Howard stored here." After coming out of the portal, Kale ordered the servants to go downstairs. When he looked up and saw his old friend, a rare warm smile appeared on his handsome face. "Fry, it's been a few months." "Yeah." Fry shook his head emotionally. His usual serious expression as the director was gone and he smiled bitterly. "It's all thanks to you. Being the director of SHELD is not easy. It's hard, tiring, and troublesome." As he spoke, Fry walked up to Kale and patted his shoulder with both hands. He said sadly, "Kale, Howard already told me about your body over the phone. I'm sorry, but you have all the resources I have, and you also have the resources I don't have. Now, this position of SHELD was given to me by you. I really don't know how I can help you. It's not your fault. Not just you, no one on Earth can help me. Kale shrugged and said, I'm the only one who can save myself. Are we leaving soon? Frey's already tanned face darkened as he asked. Kale did not hide anything from him and answered directly, including today, there are 3 more days. On the night of the 3rd day, I'll try to use some methods to leave Earth. 3 days, huh? I see. Fry seemed to have something on his mind and did not continue. Let's not talk about this anymore. I've brought someone over. Kale gestured to the side. The red-haired Natasha walked out of the teleportation portal that was still in the shape of a wheel, leaving wet footprints on the floor. I know. Natasha Romanov, an elite agent of the Soviet Red Room. Fry walked towards Natasha with a smile that he thought was friendly. He extended his hand and said, the last time I saw you, it was during World War II. You were severely injured by Kale on the battleship. I was the one who arranged for your treatment and placement in the interrogation room. My name is Natasha Karl now, Natasha replied in an annoyed tone as she shot a cold glance at Fry. She didn't really like Fry. How could he dig up her dark past the moment they met? Get to know each other. From now on, you'll be partners in SHELD. Natasha nodded helplessly at Kale's words. Fry chuckled and said with satisfaction, very good. With a super agent that I can trust and take care of each other, I'll feel more at ease doing things at SHELD. After the 3 of them sat comfortably on the sofa, the maid served the red wine, poured them wine, and left. Kale elegantly raised his wine glass and swirled the red wine inside. He asked, what's wrong? Are you feeling uneasy as the director of SHELD? Fry didn't answer. He took a sip of red wine and said solemnly, Kale, you were right before. SHELD isn't that simple. The goal is to eliminate and eradicate the Hydra organization, but many of the management and personnel are elites transferred from various departments of the US government and military. The relationship between the departments has been very complicated since it was first established. Do you suspect that there are spies from Hydra? Kale asked calmly. It's not a suspicion, it's a certainty. And I recently discovered one of them. It's my new secretary, and he's the staff member that I spend the most time with every day. Fry sighed in annoyance and said to Kale apologetically, I was careless. I've dealt with Hydra so many times, but I still underestimated their ability to infiltrate and hide. Kale wasn't surprised. SHELD in the original work was half a den of Hydra, so the current situation was pretty good. He pondered for a moment and asked, have you gotten rid of the spy? Not yet, after I see you, I still want to find more lurkers through the little mouse. Fry said coldly, his one-eyed eyes were sharp and majestic like an eagle, and he already had the domineering embryonic form of the future director of SHELD. That's simple. Kyle, on the other hand, smiled and said thoughtfully, after you went back, you accidentally revealed to that little mouse that my body had become seriously ill due to the nuclear radiation, and that I had lost my bodily functions and was living in seclusion in this manner to recuperate. In 2 days, I'll move out of here and go to an unknown island to live. You want to lure them here? Fry understood Kale's idea as soon as he heard it. Kale nodded and said, the Hydra organization, if one head is cut off, another will grow. On the eve of the day I leave the Earth, if they dare to come, then none of them will go back. Natasha raised her hand and interjected, this trap. Isn't it too obvious? Hydra shouldn't be fooled. It doesn't matter if they come or not, it's just an attempt. Kale crossed his legs and leaned back on the sofa, his blue eyes flashing with a shrewd and wise luster. And half of the information Fry revealed to them is true. With important information that's half true and half false, plus the attraction of killing me as a symbol of peace, I believe there will still be idiots who will come. Not only the remnants of the Hydra organization, maybe they will also persuade other forces to come together and give me a big surprise. Kale's lips curled up, using himself as bait to set a trap. He actually had a faint sense of expectation. He was really looking forward to more enemies coming and using their lives as a farewell gift. Natasha nodded in agreement. Indeed, if they know that there's a problem with your body, even if it's only 1/10 credible, someone from the Red Room will definitely try to send a lot of agents over. Not only the Soviet Red Room, but also the German Nazi, Nissan Samurai, Ninja. By the way, your hatred in their hearts is so high that it has broken the upper limit. Fry laughed involuntarily. On the eve of my departure, they are welcome to come to the manor for a gathering. Kale chuckled, he couldn't wait to send the invitation to them. Who wouldn't accept it? Don't hold it in. Don't drag the grudges of this era into the future, settle them all together. By the way, there's one more thing, I don't know if I should tell you. Fry looked hesitant, and under Kale's surprised gaze, he said hesitantly, Paige Carter, do you still remember? Carter? This name seemed to awaken Kale's memories. Of course, he didn't forget that the first rare green card in his life was drawn from her. Chapter 152. What's wrong with Carter? Is she doing well? Kale asked. Ever since Steve went missing in a plane crash and was late to the party, he had not seen Carter again. It had been almost a year since then. You can ask me for the details. I don't know. Fry spread out his hands and said slowly, I only know that she only stayed at the training base for half a month during the Normandy landing campaign. Later, it seemed that due to some family reasons, she applied to leave from General Chester and returned to her residence in New York. She retired earlier than me. Kale had a complicated look in his eyes. After a moment of silence, he asked hesitantly, Is she married? Natasha raised her head in surprise. This was the first time she saw the family head having personal feelings for a woman outside of family Cal. In fact, Kale did not ask this question for himself. I don't think so. But she's not young anymore. It's not surprising that she's married, Fry said matter-of-factly. It's not surprising. Kale nodded calmly. He raised his head and drank the red wine in his glass in one gulp. Although Carter was an elite American agent, she was just an ordinary person after all. She was an outstanding woman who was agile. Now, they did not even know whether Steve was dead or alive. How could they let her wait forever? How could they let her wait until her beauty withered and her body weakened? How could they let her suffer alone for 10 long years? Carter was not Lucy. Instead of asking her to wait hopelessly, it was better to help her live a happy life, Kale. Fry interrupted Kale's thoughts and said in a deep voice, You're about to risk your life and leave Earth. Are you sure you don't want to see her? To put it bluntly, this might be the last time you see her. Isn't this the reason why you asked me to meet you? This sentence touched Kale slightly. He put down the glass in his hand and made a decision. Okay, I'll see her before I leave. There was no reason for him to leave without saying goodbye. And now that he had enough money and ability, he could give Carter everything she wanted. If Carter insisted on waiting for Steve to come back, he could even give her a few centuries of youth and lifespan. Isn't that right? A smile appeared on Frey's fierce and domineering face. He reached his hand into the pocket of his black windbreaker and took out a black and white photo of a house. Carter is still living with her parents. This is her home address. Pick a time in the next 3 days to go there and say goodbye. You've been plotting against me for a long time, haven't you? Kale's face was slightly cold as he looked at Fry with a half-smile. That's not. Well, I think it's about time. We should go back to the station and carry out the trap plan. Fry laughed and put the photo on the table in front of the sofa. He quickly got up from the sofa and waved at Natasha to leave with him. This old fox. Kale couldn't help but laugh. He put away the photo and sat on the sofa without moving. With his back facing the door, he said, "Goodbye." Hearing his words, Fry and Natasha, who were about to walk to the door, paused. Fry clenched his fists and suppressed his inner emotions. He took a deep breath and replied steadily, "Be careful. Also, please come back." After saying goodbye to Natasha and Fry, Kale opened the portal and returned to the island base. As soon as he returned to the first underground floor of the fortress, he saw a few young apprentices rushing to him in a panic. "Master, this is bad. The great inventor has gone crazy. Howard has gone crazy. Tell me clearly." When Kyle heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned. They had only been out for less than half an hour. What was wrong with Howard? One of the apprentices reported, "We saw the great inventor in the research room on the second underground floor. His body was shaking, and he looked crazy. He was also jumping, rolling, and making strange noises." "I see. You can go now." Kale nodded. He didn't need to use the elevator, so he opened the portal to save time. The portal was formed in about 3 seconds. As soon as it connected to the general research room on the lower floor, Howard's happy laughter came from the other side. There were also all kinds of noises made by tapping on various instruments. Kale frowned and stepped into the research room. He glanced around to make sure. On the spacious floor of the general research room, there were laser-emitting instruments, acceleration tubes, triangular frames, and so on. There were many different kinds of instruments and parts scattered on the ground. Howard, wearing a white protective suit, was dirty from head to toe. He was sitting in the middle of a pile of acceleration tubes. He was excitedly tapping on the metal tubes with iron pliers, laughing non-stop. "Howard?" Kale said. Howard suddenly turned around, raised his arms and cheered, "Kale. I did it, I finally did it." "What did you do? Could it be?" Kale's eyes widened. As if to confirm his guess, Howard picked up a glass cube storage box. There was an unknown small piece of energy substance in the bottle. It was shining with a dazzling blue and white light. Kale's eyes were attracted by the familiar light. He stepped forward and took the storage box with the energy substance. The relevant card information came into view. New elemental crystal block, a new elemental crystal block that has not been named. Blue item card. As an isotope similar to the universe stone, it is an efficient energy element produced only by the use of high-tech and artificially accelerating particle collisions. The element is very stable, reliable, pollution-free, and contains an unimaginable amount of energy. Even a small piece of elemental energy crystal can supply the Iron Man armor for half a day's battle. "Howard, you're really something." Kale sighed, looking at the brand new elemental crystal block in his hand that did not exist in this era and was created 50 or 60 years in advance. This is the core energy of the future Iron Man armor, which is better than the Hydra organization, which relies on the infinite energy created by the magic cube. With so many resources at hand and the support of the Wakanda Ministry of Science and Technology, if I can't make it, I'll be letting you down. Howard smiled and looked expectantly at the results in Kale's hands. He urged, "Kale, give this element a name." "I named it." Kale pointed to his nose. "This is a new element that you designed and worked hard to create. It's all thanks to you. The element design blueprint was groped out from the magic cube you brought back, and the production resources were also obtained through your cooperation with Wakanda." Howard said without regret. "Then I'll name it." Kale pondered, because of the blue light of the elemental crystal. After thinking for a while, he finally made up his mind and said. Chapter 153. New York, Brooklyn, Highland Street. Highland Street, as a symbol of peace, became the busiest street in New York in less than a few months after the end of World War II. Every day, there were many tourists visiting Kale's old home outside the wall. Among them, there was a vast open space in the street area that was recently developed with a high-voltage power grid as a wall protection. A new high-tech skyscraper was built inside, and it was rumored that a secret department recognized by the state had moved in. Officers and politicians often went in and out of the building, and the transportation was also military fighter jets and bulletproof cars. In front of the open space of the skyscraper, on the left was the symbol of peace, Kale, holding a sword, and on the right was Captain America, Steve, carrying a shield. Both of them were 5-meter-tall metal statues, standing side by side. This was the headquarters of SHELD. At this time, on the 12th floor of the building, in a closed pantry. Through the soundproof bulletproof glass door, one could see that there were 3 people resting in the pantry. A middle-aged executive, a secretary in a black suit, and a security guard of the exclusive floor. Some of them were smoking, some were making coffee, and some were chatting with their phones. They were scattered around and seemed to be doing their own things. If someone opened the door of the pantry and heard the discussion of the 3 people inside, they would be shocked. The surveillance of the pantry has been changed. No one will come in during this time. Tell me if you found anything. Of course, I found something, a very important discovery. It's about Kale. The symbol of peace? The executive and the security guard's face changed slightly. Although they knew that it would be bad if their colleagues saw this, they still couldn't calm down the fear and shock in their hearts. For them, the man who was called the symbol of peace was a taboo of taboos. Generally, they wouldn't mention his real name. The secretary took a deep breath and said solemnly, "This morning, the director went out alone. He said he was going to visit his comrades, but in fact, he went to a manor to visit that man. He also brought back the Black Widow who betrayed the Soviet Red Room. After he retired, he almost disappeared. A few months ago, it seems that he only went to the Soviet Red Room to make a scene. Why mention him? After Ivan's death, we don't have the ability to touch him at all." The executives and security guards whispered with slight dissatisfaction. Even if they knew the whereabouts of the symbol of peace, it was impossible to deal with the godlike powerful man. Red Skull and Ivan of the Hydra organization were examples. One went missing and the other was kicked to death on the spot. Perhaps, he has the ability. The secretary narrowed his eyes and whispered. This sentence made the executives and security guards look at him subconsciously, not understanding what he meant. The secretary lowered her voice and continued, "I also received an important piece of news from the director regarding the physical condition of the symbol of peace. I heard that he did not completely escape the radiation damage of the nuclear bomb and is now bedridden in the manor." "What did you say?" The security guard was shocked, but soon he forced himself to calm down. "Wait." The executive remained calm and asked in a deep voice, "How likely is it that this information is true? Also, have you sent someone to monitor the manor? It doesn't matter if it's true or not. The problem is that the man will leave the manor in less than 3 days. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." The secretary grinned with madness in his eyes. "If we can kill the symbol of peace, we may be able to set off the world's chaos again. Moreover, judging from the various signs of the director, this information is half likely to be true." The secretary was afraid that the two would flinch and added another sentence. The security guard and the executive looked at each other. This was undoubtedly a big gamble, but if the gamble was won, then the Hydra organization could take revenge successfully. "Do you want to gather our surviving armed forces from all over the world? Gamble on the future of Hydra?" The executives were still fearful, recalling the tragedy of the organization's personnel in the past. "That's naturally impossible. We have enough armed personnel in Hydra." The secretary chuckled darkly and suggested, "Don't forget that we're not the only ones who want that man dead, given the massacre he carried out during the war." "That's right. We can pass this information to some organizations and try to work with them once." Kill the symbol of peace. If it can be done. 3 employees of SHELD, with different identities, talked directly about the topic of killing the symbol of peace in the tea room of the new SHELD building. This may be something that even Fry didn't dare to think about. But this trap, the spies of the Hydra organization naturally stuck their heads out and waited for the moment to reel in the rope. Under the surging undercurrent of the Earth, 2 days passed quickly. Kale estimated that it was time to leave the Earth. The day before he was ready to leave, on the outskirts of New York, at the old site of the family manor. It was in the afternoon, the sun had not yet set, the golden sunlight was like a thin coat, slanting over the manor building and the surrounding dense woods, the elongated shadows intertwined. Kale stood in front of the window covered by the curtains. In the conference hall behind him, Yutong, wearing a hooded black trench coat, sat in a chair, shaking her white and tender legs in the air, keeping her mind active, her eyes flashing slightly with silver light. Boss. Outside the manor, within 100 meters, there are 2 people hidden in the forest. The distance is too far, I can't read their minds. Yutong's answer was cold and childish. They should be spies, don't worry about them. Kale said with a shrug. Boss. Logan walked into the room from the corridor and informed, the new people and servants in the original manor have been secretly transferred out through the portal, there are only 3 of us left here. Very well, if they really want to attack, they should choose the night. Kale looked at the clock on the wall, there were still about 2 hours before the evening, and said, I'm going to meet someone first. You stay in the manor, kill all who come in, don't leave anyone alive. Okay, they tried to assassinate Boss, I will use Murasame to string their bodies together. Yutong nodded obediently, the Nissan sword behind her back slowly floated out of its sheath, and her mind controlled it to rotate back and forth on its own. I hope they can come in earlier. Logan's face was cold, leaning against the wall by the door, his right hand was lightly clenched into a fist, 3 bright sharp metal claws stretched out, a bit like 3 blades inserted at the end of the fist. Family Cal's 2 top fighting forces were stationed, whoever entered the house tonight would know how big the surprise was. Chapter 154. New York, Queens, near the outskirts. The sun was setting in the west, and the clouds in the western sky were dyed red. A cool breeze gently blew down the hillside and the cement road, and the yellow wheat fields on both sides of the road rippled like the waves of the sea. Farmers worked in the wheat fields in 2s and 3s. While sweating, their faces were filled with satisfaction and happiness. After World War II, people yearned for and cherished the beautiful and comfortable life. The sparks were extinguished under the sun, and a silver-haired young man appeared in the middle of the originally empty road. The hood covered most of his hair and face. He was tall and wore a fashionable black leather jacket and jeans. Whether it was his perfect appearance or his cold temperament, it was easy to attract the attention of the farmers. Looking around the vast wheat fields, the silver-haired young man lowered his head and glanced at the photo of the residential building in his hand. He frowned, but he did not expect that even the spell would be a little ineffective under the abnormality of his body. He did not arrive at the exact location of the photo. A middle-aged couple walked out from the wheat field beside him. They had kind faces and asked kindly, "Young man, what can I help you with?" "Excuse me, do you know where Paige Carter lives?" The silver-haired young man raised the photo in his hand and showed it to the couple who came forward. "Paige Carter?" The middle-aged couple's faces changed. They looked at each other, and when they looked at the silver-haired young man again, their gazes were less gentle and more vigilant. The bearded uncle raised his eyebrows and tightened his grip on the farming tools in his hand. He said in a slightly stern tone, "Who are you? Are you from the military? How many times have I told you that Paige will no longer return to work?" "I was indeed from the military, but I retired a long time ago." The silver-haired young man shrugged. He did not want to talk too much nonsense and explain. He said concisely, she and I are comrades in arms. We are about to leave New York, so I came to visit. Well. The farmer woman hesitated. The bearded uncle next to her shook his head and put the farming tools on the ground. He refused and said, "If there's anything, just tell us directly. We will pass on the message for you. Paige is recuperating, and it's not convenient for her to see guests." Being rejected so decisively, the silver-haired young man did not seem angry. He nodded and asked, "May I know who the two of you are?" The middle-aged couple was about to answer when a sweet and cold female voice suddenly came from not far behind them. "Father, Mother, what's wrong?" A woman wearing an elegant lady's hat and a Western-style casual suit stood at the corner of the Wheatfield Road with a basket in her hand. She stood tall and straight in a military posture. "Ah, Peggy, why are you here?" Family members are like this, caring for others is just too exaggerated. A ripple flashed in her eyes as Carter replied blankly. "It's good that you're fine. Before Steve crashed, he asked me to take care of you. If something happened to you, I wouldn't be able to leave with peace of mind." Cale chuckled. This sentence made Carter's face dim. She stopped again and quickly turned her head and asked in surprise, "Leave? Where are you going?" "I'm about to leave New York, America, and go to a distant place." Cale's face was calm as he said without joy or sorrow. "When will you come back?" Carter took a deep breath and asked. "I don't know, I may come back, I may not come back." With a faint smile, Cale looked at Carter and said, "I have asked Howard to sign the document and transfer $1 million to your personal bank account. You can officially withdraw it at the central bank. In addition, after I go back, I will ask someone to inform Fry and Joseph to intervene and no one from the military will come to disturb you again. You can go and live any life you want." With that said, Cale raised his right hand and two life-granting cards that others could not see were sandwiched between his two fingers. He waved them forward and the cards quickly disappeared into Carter's body and took effect. Two rare blue life-granting cards added up to a natural lifespan of 60 years. According to the original movie, Carter's lifespan of more than 90 years was more than enough to live to the middle of the next century. Why did Cale only give her the life-granting cards? This was also the decision that he had made after careful consideration. Steve could not give Paige Carter the life that she wanted, and it was even more impossible for him to give it to her. Whether it was to continue waiting for a long time or to live a peaceful and happy life as an ordinary person, it was all up to Carter's personal wish. "I understand," Paige smiled. Her sexy and delicate face was like a blooming rose. She suddenly took a step forward and hugged Cale. Like a dragonfly skimming the water, she kissed his cheek that was close to the corner of his mouth. "This will be my farewell gift." Cale only felt a breeze of fragrance, and there was some moisture left on his face. Paige had already turned around and walked a few steps forward. With her back facing him, she said, "You can go now. Take care." Touching the place where he was kissed, Cale nodded and cast a spell to open a portal on the spot. Looking at Carter's beautiful back, he suddenly had a strong feeling that after this farewell, he might not be able to see the woman in front of him again. Chapter 155. As the sun set, the cold and dark night fell upon the forest. Only the lights inside the manor were illuminated, like a faint halo dispersing the darkness. After returning to the manor, Care sat on the chair in the master's office on the second floor. Yutong stood beside him obediently. She manipulated the red wine bottle to float above the table and tilted it to pour the wine down. The red wine flowed into the goblet. Not a single drop spilled out. "What's the situation outside?" Kyle asked while stroking Yutong's long black hair as he raised his glass and took a sip of wine. "There are almost 30 people hiding in the forest within 100 meters of the manor. There should be more beyond that." Yutong squinted her eyes like a cat and answered softly. They probably can't hold it in any longer. Kale chuckled and tapped his fingers on the table rhythmically. Dong dong dong. Like a countdown clock, the ringing stopped abruptly. Yutong opened her watery eyes slightly and raised her voice, "It's coming." As soon as she finished speaking, a series of explosions sounded outside the manor. More than 10 rocket launchers broke through the balcony window and were about to explode when they suddenly stopped. Bzzzt bzzzt. The rocket launchers that were still spewing flames and smoke into the office stopped completely. They were suspended in the air, as if they were blocked by some mysterious force. "I'll return them to you." Yutong's eyes flickered with silver light. She waved her small hand, and the cannonballs made a turn. They flew back according to the trajectory they were launched from, and disappeared into the night outside the manor. Immediately after, the sound of bombs exploding outside the manor rang out. The shock waves caused the curtains to flutter, and the screams of many people could be vaguely heard. It was like the beginning of a battle tonight. A sudden attack was about to happen. After the joint team that planned to kill Kale outside knew that they had been exposed, the armed men rushed out of the forest and broke into the main building of the manor. Bang! The first gate of the manor, which had a low defense, was destroyed by a high-explosive grenade. Smoke grenades were thrown in as a cover, and dozens of armed men in black combat uniforms, armed with swords and sabers, or guns, charged in. Hearing the loud noise coming from downstairs, Kale was unmoved. He calmly leaned back in his chair, raised his wine glass, and enjoyed the taste of red wine. Yutong didn't have the slightest intention to go downstairs. She closed her eyes and used her willpower to search for the enemy from the second floor. The second floor was her battlefield. As for the first floor, what monster! Kill him! The sounds of grenades being thrown in, the dense interweaving gunshots, and the extremely tragic screams, showed no signs of stopping as soon as they started. From the lobby downstairs, through the floor and the office door, they reached Kyle's ears. Logan's body was just implanted with adamantium not long ago. It's just the right time to sharpen his claws. Gently swirling the goblet, Kyle's face was indifferent, as if he was a demon who was used to battles and life and death. In the tragic atmosphere downstairs, which was like a storm of slaughter sweeping through, he minded his own business and tasted the bright red wine. At this time, in the manor's first-floor hall, the luxurious large glass lamp kept swaying, blurring the light and shadows in the smoke-filled room. More than a dozen dismembered corpses were lying messily in a pool of blood. Most of the fatal wounds on the corpses were on the neck and chest. It was simple and direct, basically a one-hit kill. Accompanied by fierce gunfire and screams, more members of the joint team that broke into the manor died on the red carpet on the floor. What's going on? Did that man do it? Sweat flowed from his forehead into his eyes. The tall white man didn't dare to blink. He held the dark metallic luster of the assault rifle tightly. As the team leader of the mission to attack Kale, he was one of the members of Hydra and the leader of the team that broke through the manor's defense. The goal of this temporary enemy attack was the symbol of peace. The remaining members of the Hydra organization were mainly involved in this secret joint operation. In addition, there were elite agents of the Soviet Red Room and warriors and ninjas of the Nissan Ninja organization. The members were all good at attacking and raiding. But now, as soon as they broke into the manor's first floor, they were unilaterally massacred by a single enemy, the symbol of peace. Is it you? Come out. The team leader growled as he slowly retreated to the team at the main entrance of the manor. You bastards, are you worthy of the patriarch's attention? With a cold snort, a middle-aged man with short hair rushed out of the smoke. His body blew a strong wind at high speed, dispersing the smoke. He ignored everyone else and kept approaching the team leader alone. He's coming out. Shoot him. The team leader was not surprised but happy. He laughed ferociously and pulled the trigger fiercely. The muzzle of the rifle continued to emit fire. More than a dozen armed personnel around him reacted very quickly and also aimed at Logan and fired, suddenly forming a rain of bullets. With a sneer, Logan did not mean to retreat. Like a reckless man who was not afraid of death, he rushed forward against the bullets. When he was in the air, 3 sharp white metal claws stretched out of his blood-stained fists. Taking countless bullets with his chest, Logan rushed to the front of the team leader. The grin on the team leader's face was turning into dismay. Only to see the flash of a knife, the claws swung smoothly. The hot barrel of the rifle and the neck of the team leader were cut into 2 bloody and cruel halves. Gritting his teeth, Logan let out a beast-like roar. The bullets that had pierced his body earlier were quickly squeezed out under the control of his muscles. They fell to the ground with tinkling sounds. The bullet holes in his body had healed before they even bled. Another monster who is not afraid of bullets. No one knew who said this, and the eyes of the joint personnel in the hall on the first floor were filled with despair. On the other side, in the office on the second floor of the manor, Yutong sensed something and opened her eyes. She saw 3 ninjas dressed in black, each with a Nissan sword on their back. They broke through the glass window of the balcony and quickly rushed in like ghosts. The leader of the ninja team was a man with long sleeves fluttering in the wind. It was obvious that he was missing an arm. Demon Kale. I finally see you again. His voice was hoarse like a ghost that crawled out of hell. The man opened his face mask with one arm and stared at Kale on the chair with a pair of vicious eyes. Isn't this Hojamaru, an old acquaintance? Kale, who had been disinterested, finally raised his head and looked at the one-armed ninja standing in the room. He smiled and said, "You didn't die and came to give me a sword again? Baka." Hojamaru couldn't help but curse in his own language. He was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. In the previous battle in Hojo Dojo, his arm was cut off by Kyle's murasame made of sodium carbon steel. He was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He forced himself to burn and paralyze nerve poison to stop the bleeding. He left to go back for treatment. Chapter 156. Kale sat on a chair with Yutong by his side, facing off against the 3 Nissan ninjas. As expected, there's something wrong with your body. That's how it should be. Nissan paid such a heavy price, so how can you escape unscathed? Hojo Maru's face contorted as he laughed sinisterly. He looked at Kale's old and weak silver hair and used his remaining left hand to draw the Nissan sword from his back. Tonight, I'll use you as a blood sacrifice for the thousands of innocent Nissan citizens. Are you done with your nonsense? If you are, then hurry up and start. Kale yawned in boredom. He didn't intend to make a move himself. He reached out and rubbed Yutong's small head and ordered, "Go, play with them." Yutong nodded lightly and walked forward with small steps, standing in front of the 3 ninjas who drew their swords. You're joking, right? Hojo Maru's mouth twitched. His eyes were filled with hatred and coldness, but they were filled with anger from being humiliated. No matter how you looked at her, she was a cute and harmless girl. She was so short and tender that she had no combat ability. Letting Yutong make a move is already giving you a lot of face. Kale smiled. It seemed that these ninjas were in a hurry to get revenge, but didn't understand the situation. Attack together. Hojo Maru said coldly as he stared darkly at Yutong. The other 2 ninjas looked at each other and quickly nodded. They followed Hojo Maru. The 3 of them rushed forward with their swords in hand as if they had rehearsed this countless times. At the same time, their hands turned into afterimages. After several whooshing sounds, small objects like darts and needles were thrown at a speed comparable to bullets, forming the first dangerous killing formation. Seeing this, Kale, who was sitting behind Yutong, shook his head as if he could already see the result. Raising her small hand, Yutong's eyes flashed with a cold silver light. Her powerful mind materialized, and with her body as the center, translucent energy waves surged outwards, causing even the space in the room to ripple. In an instant, there is an illusion that time and space in the entire office is stagnant. The flying needles and darts are all suspended half a meter away from Yutong. The three ninjas who are still diving forward behind her are constantly slowed down. They can't break through even if they try their best. What's going on? The hand holding the Nissan sword trembled, and Hojo Maru held his breath with difficulty. It was as if there was an invisible wall of air separating them from each other. You're not allowed to get close to boss. Yutong's eyes glowed with a silver light. She pushed her hands outwards, pushing away the transcendent will that had materialized. With a buzzing sound, the needles, darts, and a series of hidden weapons, as well as the three sword-wielding ninjas behind him, were all suddenly sent flying back. After tumbling a dozen times in the air, their bodies overlapped each other and crashed into the balcony on the second floor. It's over. Yutong's soft and tender words were like the command of the Grim Reaper at this time. Under the urging of the invisible mind, the cursed blade Murasame was suspended in the air and turned into a stream of light with its own power. No! Hojo Maru's eyes widened, and his face was distorted and ferocious. He was not reconciled. He came here from thousands of miles away. As a result, Kale hasn't made a move yet, and he was going to lie here and turn into a corpse. The cursed blade Murasame cut through the air and rushed straight to the three people on the ground. At the moment of life and death, Hojo Maru's eyes flashed a trace of fierceness. He quickly and decisively reached out, grabbed a ninja behind him, and lifted it as a meat-cushioned shield in front of him. Pucci! With a scream, the ninja's face was desperate, watching the cursed blade Murasame roaring, easily inserted into his chest, and sank into the sword hilt. Damn it! Hojo Maru growled, threw the ninja's corpse in his hand out of the balcony, and roared into the night outside. How long do you want to wait? Oh, do you have accomplices? Hearing this, Kale took a sip of red wine and was not surprised by this. He raised his head and saw several spikes attached to ropes, which were thrown from the outside and wrapped around the remaining stone pillars of the balcony. Then, 4 female agents in tight black leather jackets grabbed the ropes and lightly pulled them to the balcony next to Hojo Maru. Super Agent. Red House, they really don't learn their lesson. Kale's face was cold. Last time, seeing their sincerity in offering Black Widow an infinite formula, and Winter Soldier Baki's face, they finally didn't destroy the Red Room organization's base. Now, the Red House probably moved the location of the base and forgot the pain after the scar healed. It's settled. In the future, the target of the Family Cow's grassroots members will be the Hydra organization and the Red House Secret Service. It just so happens that the Red House still has Super Agent Serum. Kale thought to himself. At this time, Yutong was already fighting with the 6 enemies in the office. Bullets from guns, darts from hidden weapons, cursed blade Murasame from cold weapons, and wooden tables and stools in the room. Countless objects formed a chaotic storm, and from time to time, they collided with each other and exploded, or hit the floor and walls. Whether it was ninjas or super agents, their strength was between the Black Widow Natasha and the elite soldiers, which meant that they were all above ordinary humans. But Yutong alone faced the 6 people who launched the attack. Her small face was calm and cold, and the silver light in her eyes showed signs of turning red. Get out of my way! Hojo Mura roared, and broke through the line of floating objects covered in wounds. He flew close to Yutong, and quickly and accurately swung his Nissan blade. Yutong raised her eyes coldly, and a table flew over out of thin air, acting as a shield to block the sword attack. However, Hojo Mura's Rizang katana cut the table in half. With a flash of the blade, the tip of the blade rushed straight to her white neck. Seeing that he was about to succeed in killing her, Hojo Mura's face was filled with joy. But in the next moment, Yutong quickly and nimbly dodged to the side, and Nissan's blade missed and only cut off a few strands of black hair. Hojo Mura was still in the air, and Yutong grabbed his single-armed wrist with both hands. She spun around on the spot and slammed Hojo Mura's body onto the floor. How is this possible? Hojo Mura's mind went blank. Before he could react, he felt the pain and wailed. It was Yutong who had snatched the Nissan blade from his hand and slashed a fatal wound on his chest that was so deep that his bones could be seen. Blood spurted out like a fountain. This is the current Yutong. Kale chuckled, feeling gratified and satisfied with the Yutong that he had nurtured. Her telekinesis control was too powerful, so powerful that the enemy would intuitively think that Yutong was only good at long-range attacks, but they didn't know that she also had the extraordinary physique of a super agent and several combat skills. Yutong, who had comprehensive abilities and no weaknesses, could completely replace Kale and become the best candidate for ruling the current era on Earth. After Hojo Mura fell, the deadlock on the second floor suddenly became clear. Under Yutong's one-sided slaughter, the remaining ninjas and agents frantically fled outside when they saw that the situation was not good. Don't let a single one of them escape. With a cold voice, Kale finished the red wine in his glass and looked indifferently at the fleeing enemies. Chapter 157. A long night passed. The main building of the manor was damaged and almost collapsed. The smell of blood and gunpowder was strong inside the first and second floors, and hundreds of corpses were piled up in every corner of the manor. As soon as dawn broke in the morning, personnel from SHELD secretly surrounded the area, recovered the bodies of the manor after the war, identified them one by one, and cleaned and disinfected the place. The newly developed helicopter buzzed and landed on the courtyard, and the spiral blades blew up a lot of dust and gravel. Before it stopped, Fry, wearing a black trench coat and a fierce one-eyed bald head, jumped out of the cabin, followed by Natasha in a cool black uniform. "Hello, Director." "Hello, Director." The armed personnel with guns at the entrance of the manor, as well as the doctors and nurses who performed the autopsy, saw the two people coming and quickly put down their work and greeted them in awe. Only a man in a suit dressed as a secretary stood on the steps of the manor, holding the threshold with one hand and looking a little dazed. "Secretary Martin, how's the inspection going inside?" Fry cleared his throat and asked in a deep voice. "Ah, Director, you're here." The secretary was startled by the voice and looked back at Fry. His pale face became even paler, and he stammered, "Well, at present, there are 105 corpses, and they died tragically. Some of them are Soviet agents and Nissan ninjas." "Oh. You missed it." Fry stared straight at him and said meaningfully. "What did I miss?" The secretary wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and asked. Fry continued, "There should be people from the Hydra organization among them. Didn't you already know that?" "Director, don't joke around, how could I have known that?" The secretary squeezed out an ugly smile. Fry patted him on the shoulder and said, "Okay. Don't pretend, Sammy, I just got rid of some of the people inside SHELD, and you're the only one left, Hydra spy." Before he could finish, the secretary's face turned pale, and his legs went soft and he sat down on the steps of the manor. Natasha did not need Frey's instructions. She walked over and handcuffed the man, and the armed men beside her escorted him to the helicopter. He should be leaving today. Fry stopped in front of the door and said emotionally, "It's about time." Natasha nodded and stood beside Fry on the stairs, quietly looking at the manor in front of them. Perhaps the people of this world have yet to realize one thing. Fury shook his head inexplicably. He could not hide the sadness in his voice as he spoke. Today is February 11, 1945. A god that belonged only to humans has left. At this time, in the hinterland of the Atlantic Ocean, the holographic projection of the Dragon Turtle Island disguised as a floating ice floe. On the rooftop of the fortress, Kale stood alone in the center. Beside him were Lucy, Yutong, Logan, and Howard. For Kale, there was no need for too many people to send him off. The 4 people in front of him were more than enough. Kale. Boss. 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 The 4 of them addressed him differently, but their faces were all heavy and sad. They clenched their fists to hide the sorrow and sadness of parting. There's no need to say too much about parting. You guys will take care of the house. With a smile, Kale took a deep breath and took a few steps forward. With a thought, Kale pulled out cards one by one and summoned them into a physical form. First was Venom. He immediately coexisted with it and transformed it into a one-piece Dark Knight combat suit. Then, he put on the 2 fingers of his left hand, put on the vibranium arm guard on his right hand, and placed a pair of energy pistols on both sides of his calf. Finally, a single-handed sodium-carbon steel sword with a leather scabbard was on his back. Now, I'm fully armed. With a light exhale, under the gaze of Lucy and the others, Kale entered the card space and pulled out the card that had always been stored at the highest place. The card turned into a real card. Kale held it between 2 fingers of his right hand. The card was crystal clear and glowing with a dazzling crystal luster. Space Origin Stone. In the old era of Earth, if one wanted to cross the boundless starry sky and go to other planets on the other side of the universe, they could only try to control and rely on it. Kale, is that the thing that can take you away from Earth? Howard stared at the crystal card and asked for the rest of Family Cal's core members. Kale nodded solemnly and explained, since the beginning of the world, the universe was formed in a Big Bang. The wreckage of the system that turned into the universe condensed into hard blocks. Among them, 6 mutants with infinite power appeared. That is the Infinity Stone. And the one in my hand is one of them, the Space Origin Stone. Only extraordinary individuals in the universe can control and use it. After saying that, Kale stared at the crystal card in his hand. He was not sure if he could be considered as an extraordinary individual right now, and if he could withstand the surging power of the Space Origin Stone. But he had no choice. If he wanted to quickly cross the galaxy, he could only try to control the Space Origin Stone. Since he had already made his choice, Kale no longer hesitated and immediately turned the card in his hand into a physical object. Under the surprised gaze of Lucy and the others, a small blue gem appeared in the palm of Kale's right hand wrapped in vibranium arm guard. It emitted a dazzling blue light and a mysterious and strange magic power. At this time, a hemisphere away, in a hall of Kamartaj's residence far away, the Ancient One sat on a cushion and explained with a gentle face. Below, dozens of monks in robes sat on the smooth floor with their eyes closed. They were immersed in the mystery of magic and patiently listened to the lecture. As if sensing something, the Ancient One suddenly stood up. While the monks were puzzled, she solemnly looked to the west. At this moment, her gaze seemed to pass through the wall, across the ocean and land, and fell on a blue gem. On the island base, the dazzling blue light of the gem almost formed a beam of light that enveloped Kale. No matter what happens, don't come near me. Yutong, Logan, look after Lucy. After saying this, Kale put his whole mind and body on the Space Origin Stone. He decisively raised his left hand and pressed it on the gem in his right palm without hesitation. The Space Origin Stone was sensitive to organic carbon. In just an instant, there was a trace of space power that penetrated into Kale's left hand. Venom couldn't bear it and moved away from his left shoulder, completely exposing his arm. Clasping his palms together, Kyle used one hand to touch the gem. Both his hands gripped the glowing Spatial Origin Stone tightly. The violent energy poured into his left palm. Kale gritted his teeth and endured the pain of half of his body being torn apart. His left arm and left half of his face were translucent and the internal blood vessels could be clearly seen. The dark blue energy of the Space Origin Stone was constantly penetrating and infecting, and the long-suppressed self-healing factor struggled to resist. Outside, The energy tide and light beam of the space origin stone had covered Kale's whole body, forming a light beam vortex that rushed up to the sky and the Milky Way star field. Ah! Kyle couldn't help but growl. His muscles were rotting, his bones were being crushed, his blood was evaporating, and his genes were being destroyed. The feeling of his body falling apart was far more painful than any other pain he had ever felt before. Despite this, he still clenched the space origin stone tightly and refused to let go. Kale! With tears streaming down her face, Lucy couldn't help but rush towards the energy beam and was quickly stopped by Logan and Yutong with heavy faces. Above the island, under the illumination of the light beam that soared into the sky, a bright starry sky image finally took shape in mid-air. The next moment, a beam of Bifrost light shrouded down and washed Kale's body. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.